I have learned that communication can solve just about anything as long as you're willing to talk about it, as long as there's a safe space, not just for one person. It is always a two-way street. So safety is something that I really prioritize, and privacy. So really just ensuring that, we can kind of talk through anything. This is my favorite memory, where we went to a wedding, and it is Paul's friends and the parents. They were there. I asked them, like, how long have you been married for? And they're like, we have been married for almost 40 years. I was like, wow, 40 years. That's more than I've been alive. So I was like very intrigued. And I was like, hey, I have a question for you. Like, what do you think has made your marriage so successful that you've been married for 40 years? And she kind of thought about it for a moment. The husband joked, which was really cute. You know, he like made a little joke, whatever. But I remember what she said. She's like, it's communication. That's pretty much it. She's like, you just want to talk through everything. And that has been a big thing for me because until I really like thought about communicating and talking, I didn't necessarily think of it as like a skill. And not just a skill, but like a skill that you can get better at. Just talking. Just like listening. Listening is also a really great skill. And sometimes we don't really give it that value that like, oh, hey, like I can hone this skill. Like I can be a better speaker. I can be a better listener. They're like, this is just how it is. And so that has really broadened my views on things. And, you know, like everyone has their own opinion and we can talk about it. We can share about it. And that's just our power, is that we can talk and that we can listen. And like we're alive to do it. To share.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I'm Mario.
And I'm Peter.
And we're
Guys That Listen.
On today's episode, I'd like to give a very great welcome back. Thank you to our very first guest ever, Linda.
Woo! Hi guys. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Welcome back. It's an honor really to come back here and celebrate your 1-year anniversary with both of you. So happy anniversary to Guys That Listen.
Thank you.
Where are you taking me, Mario? Where are you taking me tonight?
To the library.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
You said you wanted to go. You said you want to go to the library.
It's very romantic. Very romantic.
Have you taken her there yet?
No, I haven't.
They have really great Taco Tuesdays.
But she's actually going to Magic City.
What's that?
It's like the library of ATL.
Sorry,
basically.
I wouldn't know.
Oh, is that what the library is?
Yeah, that's what the library.
That's what the library is. That's what when we say we're gonna go study, like that's what we mean. Like
That's what you say.
Yeah, I don't
okay.
read. I'm just.
I mean, you're studying the human body.
Yes, exactly.
And tacos.
And tacos.
No, they actually really do have really good tacos there. There's a taco truck that pulls up there on Tuesdays, and it's just a really great taco truck. But I heard they have really good sushi too, and
Wow.
that's not a joke. Like it's actual sushi. Yeah.
But they probably did that on purpose, though. Think about it. Like, the library's already kind of like weird to name a strip club. And then you sell tacos outside of wherever you're already slanging, right? And then you sell sushi too. What's next? You know what I mean? What's another thing that you could kind of refer to like the human body?
You sound like a conspircy theorist.
I'm just saying, bro. I'm just saying, I think they're smarter than we let off. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, probably. Yeah. I mean, they have to be good business people, and it's just to serve your audience, right? So your audience is going to spend time there, and they're going to get hungry, and they're going to want food.
Yeah, that's why I'd go.
No. Yeah? Is that really?
It sounds like that's where you can take Mario.
Before we get off on all the crazy, Linda, tell us what you're about to remind our audience, and tell us what you've been up to since the last year that we saw you.
True.
This is a really good reflecting moment.
Yeah.
So the last time I was here, I'm still a business coach. What I started to focus more into is being a mindful leadership coach. So I really truly believe with great power comes great responsibility. So if you're in a leadership position, did you like that?
Yeah, I did.
Uncle Ben is not wrong.
I know, you know.
And when you're in that position of leadership, you have a lot of duties, you have a lot of responsibilities, there's a lot that really goes into it that is important to be thoughtful about, really. That's where I'm coming from. Because you are setting examples, you're coaching, you're leading other, usually humans, to greatness.
Wow, that sounds like a tall order. How'd you get into that?
Really, it was part of my healing journey. So being a coach asks to have I guess I have a high standard for myself, right? Because it's like, well, I'm here. So not only am I leading the people who are leading, I'm not like the people that I'm helping, they're in a position of high responsibility. I also have a responsibility to them to make sure that I stay up to date and I stay current with what's happening. And during my healing journey and my entrepreneurship, the mind is something that is pretty much one of the most important things for you to manage. Your mind, your mindset, everything comes from that. So I got really truthfully obsessed with learning about the mind. I feel like it's something that we don't always talk about.
Do share.
I'm pretty excited to share about this journey that I've been on, and I actually brought a book with me, so we're gonna talk a little bit about that.
I love book club.
So one of the things that is like really interesting is that really changed my perspective is that your brain and your mind are two different things. It's separate, right? It's just like how there's like your heart and then your soul. So that really was like, it changed my perspective because I'm like, oh, so your brain is like wired to do things based on your habits, based on your map of the world and like, you know, how you're raised and your experiences. And then your mind also has capabilities, like it has its own function. So you have a bit more control over your mind, things that you think about, what goes on in there, the thoughts, you have more control over that. And then your brain is a little bit more hardwired, I guess. And that's where you have to, it takes a little bit more effort to, you know, manage your mind so then it can manage the function of your brain.
I like to think of it as like the body, everything, your brain is all the hardware and your mind is the software. And you have to adjust the software, help it adapt in order to run the rest of it better.
That makes sense.
That's a great way of thinking of it.
So what has been your approach to changing all this? Like, how'd you, I mean, obviously you went through this during your healing process, but what have you learned that has helped you adjust your mind separate from your brain?
One of the first things that was really important to me was to go to therapy. 100%.
I'm telling you, go to therapy, Peter.
I mean, I had physical therapy.
Even that, you barely.
Yeah, right? Should we talk about your leg here?
hey, please leave my leg out of this. Leave my leg out of this. It's healing, all right?
Yeah, therapy has been the most worthwhile investment I've made. Better than anything. Better than designer bags. Like, honestly, shopping is like, therapy exists in different forms. That's something that I will also want to talk about too, is that it exists in different forms. And so the therapy that I go to, her name is Lynn Nguyen, and she is the creator of The Wise Heart. And she does a type of therapy called IFS, which is internal family systems, where it acknowledges that internally in your mind, you have different parts. And those different parts have different responsibilities as well, right? There's always a leader. There's always like a leader in every scenario. Like internally, externally, there's always a leader, mentor, something, right? So that happens internally too. So one of your biggest jobs is, if you have experienced trauma, is to start accepting and integrating the parts, because the parts will come out if you get triggered. So that's usually what they mean when they're like, oh, the situation triggered me. So there's probably some part of you that doesn't like being treated like that. And so it starts to come defend you. So acknowledging that has been probably a really big step in managing my mindsets, to know, oh, okay, like how to speak up about it, because now I can understand that when something like this happens, it's kind of like cause and effect, A plus B equals C.
Yeah.
So this happened, it made me feel like this. I had to identify my feelings. And now that I've kind of calmed myself down, what is it that I want to do now? Like, how do I communicate this out? What are solutions? What to do next time?
Can you give me an example of like something that was like triggering you or that you had to like heal from?
That's a really great question, because there is something that I want to bring awareness to. Yeah. So before we do that, I do want to do a container exercise for us.
Exercise.
Yes, yeah. So a container exercise is something that I learned from Brene Brown. She studies vulnerability. And so in order for us to be vulnerable, we should have like a space where we feel brave in, that we're not going to like judge each other, but not just judge each other, but judge ourselves.
Like this podcast.
Like, yeah, exactly. No, this is great. This is just going to be like really fun for us to do.
I like this.
And I like that. Yeah, I've always appreciated that you named your podcast, guys that listen. I always appreciate like having, you know, as a female, men who listen, because I think that we can learn a lot from each other.
I think so
I
too.
agree. I'm about to learn right now.
Let's contain
Class is
him.
in session.
All right.
So basically, in order to do the container exercise, what we're going to do is we're going to take turns. We can give ourselves some time to think. Like, we don't have to rush. We want to give ourselves permission. So we're basically writing, some people will write it down, but you can say it out loud as well. Permission slips for yourself. So it's like, what in this moment do I give myself permission to do? And if it would be helpful, I can like say an example?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I give myself permission in this time to take things slowly.
Can I say I give myself permission to be vulnerable in this moment?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I give myself permission to not take everything so seriously.
That's a good one. I give permission to be kind to myself.
I give permission to be honest with myself and with others.
I give myself permission to be upset.
That's a great one. How do we feel?
I'm not quite sure. I'm just processing this right now.
More chill, like good, not good, not bad. Very, at least for me, it's neutral.
A little bit like more relaxed.
Yeah,
Like
more relaxed. Like okay.
sitting a little bit like comfortable in your
Definitely,
seat.
it definitely changed the mood. It changed the mood, and not in a bad way. And I'm like, oh, okay. I feel like a twinge of openness. I'm like, okay,
A little bit more connected.
yeah.
I feel like I'm fighting my demons right now. Completely different.
And that's okay too, right? You said you give yourself permission to be upset.
Why are you upset?
Why am I upset?
What are you upset about?
I don't think I'm upset. I think I have felt upset like more often than not in the past couple months. And I've kind of I'm like, I shouldn't be mad at this.
Yeah.
But I feel upset. Like I know it's there, but I won't address it because I'm like, that's not the right thing to do, if that makes sense. You know, like I think the old me who was upset, but also like physically upset, like you could see it in the way I would act. I didn't like that person because I had really bad anger issues. And I'm like, no, I hate being that person. But then that in turn turned me to this person now where if I feel it, it doesn't come out, right? Like you rarely ever would be able to tell if I'm like annoyed or upset by certain things. And it's not that I don't feel the emotion. It's there. It's just I'm not allowing myself to act on it.
Do you feel like you ignore it?
I don't feel like I ignore it. I feel like I do address it in my head. I just don't know how to address it otherwise. Like, you know, I'll feel something, especially if it's like something where I'm upset. And I'm like, why is this kind of like nagging at me so often? Why do I feel like such attachment to this emotion right now? And typically after a while it'll go away because I want to rationalize it. I want to figure out why. Because usually when someone says something or does something that affects my mood so greatly, I'm sure this applies to other people too, I feel like usually it hits a nerve, right? There's a reason why you feel like that. And I'm always curious, like why? Like what is it?
Would you say before you were more triggered and explosive?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Do you consider that growth then now that you are in a place in your life where like you don't have to react to all these things that happen, but you're also internalizing it? Is that growth? Is that
I don't know. I would say it's growth in terms of like the way people view me. Like I used to be crazy. I don't know. I think I've told you guys like insane. Like
Okay.
you know,
you're still crazy.
A lot of things that I'm not very proud of. You know, like I've like ran to the middle of the street full of cars, stuff like that. Just like things where
punched a TV in a hotel room,
broken a bunch of TVs,
jumped in a ravine,
like just insane stuff. And I don't regret any of it because I understand like how crazy I could be, and I understand how I feel building up to that. You know, as to before, there was no limiter. It was like straight to the fucking moon. You know, like you go 0 to 100 real quick. Now I'm like, oh, I feel it. I feel that emotion. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Or I'm going to go for a walk. Or I'm going to, take a breather. But before it wasn't like that. Before there was like nothing stopping me. You know, I'd be like a lunatic. So I think just looking back and seeing how I was acting and feeling that feeling of shame, feeling of regret, like, oh, did I really do that?
Shame is a big one. Shame is like a big emotion to experience. And so for the container exercise, if you recall, I did want to share something. So this will be a trigger warning for you both, the audience that we have here and the audience that is online. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and that has come up in my adult life a lot.
In what way does it come up for you?
One of the biggest ones is intimate relationships. And it's not just like romantic relationships. It is also family, friends, like just trying to get close to people.
Is there a barrier? Do you feel like there's some kind of like sense of safety that was compromised as a child? Now that you're older, it's like hard for you to like maybe metaphorically let somebody in or open that door, crack that shell open, whatever you want to use.
That is very insightful. Yes, absolutely. There was a, it's like if you don't experience it, so safety, love, care, how would you know if you're getting it? How would I know if I'm safe? What you're talking about, the word agency comes into mind. How I found agency was first admitting it happened. And it happened earlier this year with my therapist. I was like working on a bunch of other issues because, we're human. This is part of the human experience. And I was like, this is just a secret that I've been holding on to for so many years. And when I told her, probably like a different person after telling her, because it just opened up spaces within me, parts within me, awoken them that was probably exiled for a long time.
You think you made them all dormant at the same time when you decided to not speak about that?
One particular part, very dormant, very, very dormant. Yeah, so I had to go look for it.
Yeah.
With her
'cause-
help, of course, right? That's what therapy was really good for, is that she knows how to hold space and not re-traumatize you or trigger you or like put you in a place where you don't feel safe, because safety is very important.
Was there because were you seeing her for a while prior to this point where you had revealed that
Yes. Yeah, I've been seeing her for like almost 2 years now.
to her? Okay. So I'm sure that I cannot learn her techniques within the confines of this 2-hour, 3-hour podcast, but I'm curious as to was there something that she said or did that allowed you to open up about that took up till that time for you to figure out?
That's a really good question. I definitely got really comfortable with her. So I actually knew her before. I knew her before she became a therapist. 10 years before she became a therapist. I met her in the nail industry. So I used to do like beauty and nails. And so I met her. She lives in Vancouver. I actually, when I was in my early 20s, stayed with her. When I traveled to Vancouver for work, she put me up in her place. And at that time she had, and I don't want to repeat this wrong, but like she had a boyfriend who eventually became her husband. So, I kept in touch with her through Instagram and I started seeing what she was doing, and it was changing. It became a lot more about reflecting inwards and healing trauma and journeys. And I was like, okay, this is cool. And then at one point, I think sometime in the pandemic, I was like, felt very trapped. And I was like, okay, I don't want to feel like this anymore. Like, I need to do something different. So I reached out to her and I was like, hey, can I just like talk to you? Like, what do you do? I don't really understand. And she's like, yeah, sure. We do like a 1 hour consultation and like, let's chat. So I started talking to her, and that 1 hour, it was like life changing. I was like, whoa, like this is possible. And she was like, yeah, this is just like what 1 hour is like with me. But I do multiple sessions and we can like work on things together. And so I already had that comfort level because I definitely already trusted her. And what I also appreciated is that she's Vietnamese. So she's about like 10 years older than me. And I really appreciate that because sometimes there's language barriers with your parents. So with her, I was able to work through things with family, and she understood me without even having for me to like over explain anything. So I just felt very comfortable. But even then, even though I felt comfortable, it still took time for me to be like, okay, what am I going to tell her? Like I kind of prepare. Like I brought a book, so I do like to come prepared. So I'm like thinking about things that I want to work with her. It's not inexpensive. It's definitely an investment. So I was like, I need to, very gung-ho about it. I'm like, okay, we need to like, she even asked me one time, I know I'm like, this is just kind of an ongoing story, but she asked me one time, she was like, why did you seek me out? Like, and why were you okay with my rate? She's like, it's not usual for someone of our background to seek therapy and let alone be okay with the investment. Like I didn't hesitate for a second. And I was just like, I don't know. I just felt like if I want to do something, then I should do it right. I should do it with someone that I trust. And, the money goes to you. I know you. I like you. So I think it's kind of just like a win-win, and you could help me. Like it's really one big thing I think with agency is like being okay with asking for help.
I noticed that you said her being Vietnamese is a big thing for you. And I've heard that a lot from people seeking therapy is a big conflict a lot of people have is having a therapist from a different ethnicity or cultural background. I hear that a lot in Black communities where they're like, there are not enough Black therapists. So therefore, it's hard for them to understand like the upbringing, the cultural differences. And while they do have the education in the background, they don't have the experience in the upbringing. And
Yeah.
you think that played a big role in yours and her relationship?
In mine, yes. It is something that I like to share so that when people are considering therapy and when they're looking for somebody, is that it is like dating because you can go find someone that you click with. You don't have to pick the first one that you go to. Like, if it doesn't work out, keep trying. You know, like there's thousands of them out there. And not only that, they actually a lot of them specialize in different types of therapy. So this is something that I talk to others too who go to therapy. We'll like kind of exchange notes, like what kind of therapy do you do? You know, like because like you said, Mario, earlier, that the healing journey it kind of never ends. It's like it is, and it's not linear, and so I encourage to keep an open mind on different types of therapy. You never know what is going to like unlock. Art is becoming like a big outlet as well for me. I just painted for like the first time, like for real, like not just like like a paint night or like in art class as a kid, like, and that was really, honestly, it was really cool. Like I don't even know what else to say about it. It was just very chill. You can be very present. You probably don't really do other things when you're painting. You're just staring at the paint and you're like, this is kind of nice. Like, this is just all I have to do right now.
Do you feel like
Yeah, seriously. I was like, I'm watching paint dry and I like it.
Do you feel like it unlocked some part of you that you haven't access to since you were a kid?
Yeah.
And that it's maybe that because of your trauma, some of that's been kind of like locked away?
Yeah, the childlike wonder.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I feel that. There's a something about like the arts and like being creative and stuff that helps you heal in other ways. You know, that's why they do like, art therapy or like go do something creative to help you like kind of like get past like traumas and stuff. It doesn't work for everyone, but it's definitely something that I've seen other people use to like heal.
It's something to try.
Yeah.
I did say I brought a book. So in this book, we can talk about it a little bit, but in the book, at the end of it, the doctor does share potential things for you to try. And something that I thought was very interesting is that he is a big advocate for theater. It has changed a lot of lives of like adolescents to adults, people who have been incarcerated. It just helps them go from being really closed to really open. Yeah.
Theater. That's interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of plays, like Shakespeare plays or like plays from like even before that, when there was like the gods and stuff, like Homer. Though a lot of those stories are all tragic. It's all about trauma. It's all about like terrible things happening to you. And then now what? Yeah. So it encourages people to be open, connect with each other, experience maybe some stuff they felt before. And then to your point, what you're saying earlier about being mindful about like, oh, hey, I'm feeling this. Why am I feeling this? It gives them the opportunity to kind of ask, but not have to be just about them. They can experience it through a story.
That makes sense. Do you think that, because you were talking about back then, those plays during the times of Homer, they would act, and theater is a huge thing, right? A lot of people were actors. There's philosophers, poets, jesters, a lot of different ways to express yourself,
Yeah.
It seems like those paths were more creative in a way. And do you think it has anything to do with the reason why we have a hard time expressing ourselves now is because we take more of a, there are a lot, I notice people who have the hardest time expressing themselves are typically not the artists, not the musicians. They're typically the business person, right? The person that grew up in a traumatic household that has to get straight A's. Asian families, especially a lot of trauma to unfold there, And, I think in those households, there is a way for them to express themselves most of the time because they are strictly more focused on academia, right? More focused on business.
Yeah, totally. I like that you brought that up. It's like they're praising your performance, but it's like there's also another type of performance that's like not for monetization that we don't get to do or we don't think about because yes, we're like, you must succeed and this is what success looks like. And if you don't look like this, then there's something wrong with you. And not being open-minded to other options and other ways that you can be as a human, it's very limiting. So the creativity gets really taken away. And also within like traumatic people who experience very traumatic experiences, especially as a child, that is the most impactful because we're like still growing. we lose a part of us that creativity, it doesn't thrive. Like, and the problem with that of not cultivating creativity is that we can't see other solutions, other options, because our creativity is like burnt out. So we're like, oh, this is just how it is. And people will tell me this is how it is, so I'm going to believe them and not ask questions.
I really like that, cultivating creativity. You know, I think as you become an adult, as you get in this late 20s, 30s, you start to really like understand and become aware of your own traumas, the things that have affected you. And this is the time in your life when you're like, okay, let me cultivate that creativity. Let me take those steps to kind of like fix where maybe as a kid I like stop drawing, stop painting, stop really like believing in myself, or stop trying to like really enjoy just life, just being present. Just like I remember as a kid, like I had all these like little like miniature like freaking toy things, and I'd play by myself, just like a little like, and I would spend like hours doing that. And now like I think about my own mind, and I'm like, man, I can't sit still. Like I have to have a phone on me and like check what's going on, because I can't sit still for like an hour or something. And like where did that change? Where did that happen? Like how can I like rewire myself to like kind of just enjoy something and be present, sit down, be still, and not be glued to my phone and like the constant buzz of like being connected to like social media, other people around the world, because I don't like it. I don't want to be like this constant. I don't want to have this constant connection to everyone, to my phone and everything. I want just to relax, enjoy like my own time. And I find it hard to find that balance.
So I just have this theory in my head right now. And I'm not a scientist, so it's probably incorrect. But so I think with everything, your body or your mind needs time to process. So very similarly to your body, if you're constantly eating, you're constantly digesting, and your body doesn't have a break, right? Human beings are not supposed to be fed like 24/7, which is why there's like a huge like obesity pandemic going on in the US, right? Because we're constantly snacking, we're not active enough, things like that. And I think very similarly, your mind works in the same way, where if you don't have time to process because you're constantly filling your mind with quick dopamine hits, like whether it's your phone, listening to a podcast, even watching TV, playing video games, that you don't allow that time to slow down and really get through these thoughts and feelings. So just a theory I have, because the way I see things is that I do think that mental health is under the spotlight right now, not just because we're just now figuring it out, but I do think that it's become more prevalent. There are more cases of people feeling like not well due to the fact that we're overly stimulated now. There's so much going on. There's so many forms of escapism outside of just like your phone. You could easily go and resort to like drugs and alcohol and all these other things, right? It's like endless amounts. And not having time to process it, I think that's what's kind of causing the issues that we see now. Because, again, I'm not a scientist. None of this is data-driven. But when I was in Europe, I noticed everyone is a lot more slow out there. They take their time with everything. They're more present, right? They allow to, I went to go tan with my cousin. I don't tan. I tan easily, but I don't tan.
Not as an activity.
Yeah, and he was like, hey, you want to go tan with me? I was like, yeah, sure. So we just sat at the pier for like 3 hours. We talked like a little bit here and there, but he was just like looking at the water, sitting in the sun. And I was like, this is so strange. But I see it. I get it. Because I asked him, I was like, how much do you enjoy tanning? He's like, I love it.
What?
Yeah.
It's very therapeutic.
Tanning?
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't say necessarily just that activity, but like a simple activity.
Did you guys put on sunblock?
I didn't because I was only there for 3 hours.
He's worried about your skin health.
Yeah. I just wanted to get a couple shades darker,
Sunblock you can tan with still sunblock on.
I want tan as fast as I can.
They don't matter.
I want to get closest to charcoal as possible.
That's counterproductive, right? Because it's not. That's the thing is that it's not about the speed of things, and that's something where you said slowing down.
Yeah, you got to slow down, Peter.
It's it's something that it seems like it's like, why are we being taught that? Like, why is it that that's the thing that we're learning now as adults? Hey, by the way, it's not wrong for you to slow down and like enjoy the life that you built, because like you got here and it's not easy for everybody. Like everyone has their own journey, and I like that you talked about the body too, because so the book that I brought I actually brought this camping, and so that's why it's like wet and all like damaged and everything. But I still end up reading it, so I definitely recommend it to people who are curious about trauma and like how to heal from it. It can be truthfully a little bit intense to learn a bunch of facts, but it is very insightful. And so the book is called "The Body Keeps the Score." So it, in a nutshell, is kind of explaining, educating us that even if our minds are, thinking about things like our brain is hardwired to survive. Humans are resilient. We're here. We're gonna live here forever, right? So our brains are wired that way. Our mind follows suit, and then our body does too. But the thing is, our body, things can still live in our body. It can still manifest in us in different ways, the trauma. And so even if everyone you see somebody, they look fine, you don't really know what's happening internally with their body. So there's a lot of people who get autoimmune diseases, chronic pain. Obesity is a big, big one. There was one he shares a lot of stories because Bessel van der Kolk, I hope I'm not butchering that, but he has worked 30 years with teenagers, children, teenagers to adults, and even he'll age with some of his clients. He shared a story where he was at this clinic and this woman comes in and she's quite overweight. And she went to a few therapists and nobody was really helping her and wasn't able to help her. So they're like, okay, hopefully you can help her. And so after some time, she lost the weight. She lost, I can't remember the exact number, but she lost quite a bit of weight. And then all of a sudden, a few weeks later, she comes back and she's overweight. She gained it all back and more. And he was like, this is not usual. To gain that much weight so quickly. So after getting to know her and talk to her and get to know her story, he finds out that when she lost the weight, she attracted a male's attention, and he flirted with her, and he was like, "Hey, let's have sex." It triggered her so much that she went and ate for days, and then she would even sleepwalk and eat. She's sleep eating.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and after digging into that even more, that's when he finds out that she had childhood trauma. Yeah. Dang. And that's how it ended up manifesting in her adult life.
That's kind of crazy that's the route your brain takes to kind of maybe combat the trauma, That's so I've never heard of anything like that. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's funny because it could go either way, right?
Yeah.
She could easily have the other eating disorders where she doesn't eat and she's, bulimic and all these other things.
So how did they fix her? Were they able to do something to
Yeah, so once he basically gets to the root cause. Well, so what I want to say is that you don't have to get to the root cause to figure out what to do. Just going to therapy and just working on things that are happening currently is a good start. If you're able to find the root cause, it's going to be even more beneficial because there are lots of different types of therapies in order to help you if you've gone through that trauma. And it is one of the most challenging ones, like I said earlier, because when you're young, that's the map of the world is being created. So if all the trauma happened when you're a child, and unfortunately a lot of times it's your caregivers, because who else is going to take care of you when you're a child, it will cause a bunch of these issues essentially. Yes, they were able to work on it, and usually most of the people that he works with, he's done one-on-one, he's done large group studies and clinics and stuff like that. So he's been able to work with a variety of different type of people who unfortunately he'll usually uncover that it's a childhood trauma that was and usually sexual in nature, and that is the biggest one.
Were you doing something crazy sleep fighting or something to
You see Paul's black eye? Where do you think that came from?
He fell down the stairs.
There was definitely a part of me that for a very long time, especially as a teenager, was very angry, furious, furious because of the injustice. So I was always when I saw something happening that was this isn't fair, then I might act out.
Was that conscious or unconscious anger?
Unconscious.
Yeah.
I was just perpetually angry.
Yeah.
I was that teenager that was just always sulking, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, I don't even say anything, and I'm just really closed off.
You didn't understand yourself at the same time either.
Yeah, exactly. So that was definitely one of the ways. And even speaking about disorders, so in the book, And like we're just gonna scratch the surface of the book because there's just like so much good gems in here. But he also talks about like, so let me just kind of walk you through a little bit of it because in the beginning of the book he talks about war veterans and how when they came back from war there wasn't a lot of studying of like their mental health. They're like, all right, you're gonna come back, you're gonna just go home and like get married and have kids. And then they started showing up and they had all these problems. They're having flashbacks. They're like, can't do normal things that people expect in society. And so as he started to study them, like, you know, some of them would be like diagnosed with like different disorders, whatever it is. And he said, ultimately, that is what studying and working with the veterans was how they came up with the diagnosis of PTSD because it just ended up being everything combined into the fact that like, there you have some sort of memories that you can't forget and they come and they kind of haunt you. And then that's when it manifests. So they don't have like control. So that's where agency is really important because it's like these things are happening to you, you have absolutely no control over when, where, how it's going to happen. So that's where the word trigger kind of comes from too. So he then was like, okay, PTSD is like a real thing. And so that's mostly what survivors will have is PTSD. Right. So they're like, oh, you can go and they're like, oh, maybe you have ADHD, maybe you have borderline personality disorder, oh, maybe you're bipolar, all these things. And a lot of times is that it ends up being like, if you like look at all the symptoms of PTSD, they most likely experience all those different things at once.
It's interesting that you mentioned art earlier as something like a way to heal and like just kind of like be present because I read some studies on PTSD. One is Tetris apparently is a really good way to like combat PTSD. Just like they did a study on like veterans and everything too, and they would play Tetris and it would lower the amount of like flashes that they were getting, like their triggers or the amount of times like throughout the day that they were like experiencing like, you know, just bad like trigger events. And it was just from playing Tetris, you know, and it's like,
that's really cool.
Yeah. And it was like so weird that and doing ecstasy.
There have been good studies, like successful studies. So he talks about 3 methods. And a lot of what I want to do here is also spread awareness of like, okay, you're a survivor and then now what? You know, because it's kind of scary. Like Google is scary. Like, you know, like there's some terms that you don't want to search on Google. Like, what are you going to find? I don't know. So books is always like a nice place to start. Maybe some YouTube videos or something like that. But books is good because it'll be very focused on the topic. So he talks about top down, bottom up, and drugs. And so I want to talk about drugs. So you talked about ecstasy. So top down is basically talking, sharing, kind of like going through your mind and sorting that out a little bit, understanding how the mind works. Bottom up is more like kind of doing stuff with your body to counteract maybe the helplessness that you felt at that time. That's usually a big part of it. So it's usually like fear or helplessness. So, you know, if you like take like self-defense classes, you like dance or running away, like that actually is very helpful. And then the last one is drugs. So he does talk about drugs because it's very prevalent in America. He does talk about like this, how this is kind of an epidemic in America and how drugs tends to be sometimes one of the first things that you get prescribed, like, oh, you have a disorder, like, here, let me get you some drugs. And, you know, all doctors are different, all humans are different. So drugs is one of sometimes their go-to, and it doesn't always help, although it is helpful. So I don't want to say if you're taking drugs, it's not good for you. It's just that it may just be like a temporary fix. What he did find, though, with the study of ecstasy or MDMA is that it does help put you in a better mindset to be able to like go through all of your histories, maybe share stories and be not so attached to them, because that kind of like out of body, like kind of observing with no judgment is very important for you to heal so that you could acknowledge that, oh, this is something that happened back then. This is me now. It's like 2 separate situations. So drugs can't be helpful for that. Not all drugs, but yeah, it has been found to be helpful for treatment to just get you in a better mood. Gotcha.
I actually heard a podcast about that, especially when they talk about people with PTSD or like depression or anxiety. And this is, again, not verbatim or anything, but they were basically saying that a lot of those drugs, you know how they're completely different, right? So you have like ecstasy, you have ketamine, you have Molly or MDMA. I'm sure there's other things too, but a lot of it is to give your mind that break that it needs in order for you to channel into those things. So that's what's really there for. It's like that moment of clarity that you could get that's not the you that's in panic mode right now. Same reason why people do like, cold plunges and stuff like that is because at that point your body is in shock. You're not I think of it like this. Have you ever had something that's painful and you'll do something that hurts a little bit more so that you avoid that same pain?
Oh, like when you stub your toe and then you pinch yourself?
Yeah, very very similarly. I like to think about it like that. You put yourself in a different position, different mindset for a little bit of a time, but you still got to do the work. I think that's the main thing. At that time, it feels like you alleviate something, but very similarly, it could just be a temporary Band-Aid if you don't work on the things that you need to during that time frame.
The mindfulness is important. Like, what am I doing, and what purpose does this serve? Because you were talking about it much earlier about coping mechanisms, like how we can escape. Yeah, and there's nothing bad about those things at all. Like playing Tetris, playing games, like finding things that you enjoy is not a bad thing. But at this point, it's everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't go into the deep end of everything. You just got to try a little bit of this, do a little bit of this, like, drink a little bit, smoke a little bit, like, just a little bit of
meth
everything.
didn't kill anyone.
So, where do you feel that you are right now in your journey of all this, where you have this book that's anchoring you, you have your therapist who's helped you, you've had this relationship with her 2 years, you've obviously made big steps. Where do you feel that you are right now in this journey? And how does it compare to last year when we last saw you?
So if I could title this part of my life, it is this journey of unconditional love for myself. So that's what I'm currently on right now. Compared to last year, it feels like I've grown so much. I would even dare to say that the person that's sitting in front of you is not quite the same person that you knew a year ago. And one of the missions, if I can call it that I'm on, is this self-awareness piece.
Oh.
Not just self-awareness, but awareness, period. Awareness about this that goes on, and sharing my story, because the more that I share, the easier it is to carry.
Yeah.
It's not a secret. It's not as much shame around it. And when it comes to the awareness piece, there was one part of the book that was very hard for me to accept, but it evolves. The stat evolves a lot. And it is, I will also say trigger warning, is that it is 1 in 5 Americans are molested as children.
Wow. That's not even
Yeah, you look around, you're like, ooh, let's do the stats sort of quick.
There is 5
right?
of us here.
So So the data is stacks. As soon as I read that, I was like, wow, when I show up to talk about this, I'm not alone. Yeah. There are people here, because it's just
True.
yeah. So that I think about that very often. And although it does make me sad, I feel a lot of different things. And that's the other thing too in this journey is I'll feel so many things all at once. And it's important for me to accept that that's how it is. And so I was actually curious when I had shared with both of you, Peter and Mario, about my story, how did that make you feel? What feelings came up for you?
At least for me right now, this story right now, it's such a normal story where so many people have told me the same thing in that sense, where it's you're not alone. You tell me 1 in 5, I'm I very much believe that. I've had so many people throughout my life, lots of all majority women, just hey, this happened. It's sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's a friend of a friend. And it feels so normalized to me now, and I've been there. Side story, there was a girl that I met, and we'd met on I think we met on a dating app, and we never met and anything like that. We just talked a little bit, and she calls me middle of the night one day. We've never hung out. It was a very brief conversation. There's no real banter between us, nothing. And she calls me and she's crying and she tells me about she had like an experience as a kid, trigger warning, child molestation, everything. It was like an uncle or something. And like we talked for like hours, and it was like I didn't know what to say, or I didn't know what to say, just listen to everything too. But she felt that she had nobody else that she could come to. Just this dude that she'd met on a dating app showed her some like attention, affection. And I was like, okay, we still to this day have never met. We've talked about that, like, she's not used me, but like, used me as someone to listen to her because there was nobody in her life to really talk to her about that. And that experience is so common. Not everyone gets to that point where they can like, find a therapist or a therapist.
Yeah.
Or get to the point where they're self-aware enough to like know like why do I react like this? Why do I have these triggers? Why am I so angry or hurt or this or that? So when you tell me the story, like it doesn't make me feel good or bad. It's just like, oh, it's a thing that happens, and the other part of it is though, like I am proud of you that you are owning it. You being able to talk about it gives you a type of ownership over it where it doesn't hold as much power in your life, in the sense power where it would be debilitating towards you. Maybe you're transforming it into power for yourself, where like, hey, I had this experience, yes, shitty, whatever, but now I use it as a way to not only help myself but help others.
I think I felt both bad and happy. I felt bad that you had to go through that. Happy that you're overcoming it and you're working at it. But I also felt very similar to Mara, where it's like it is very normal to hear that. I've, some of the people I've dated have gone through the same thing, and it was very dormant in their mind. And when I would see it come out, I'd be like, "Whoa, what is going on?" I didn't understand it being younger, until they kind of dove into it a little bit more, and then even then they start to uncover things that they didn't even remember. And I was like, oh, okay, well, this kind of explains like certain things, and for me that was hard because it was someone that I had been seeing, a couple of them, not even just like one person that it happened to. So I was like, damn, like this is way more normal than it should be. But at the same time, I wasn't in a place where I was able to help guide them to where they could get help. And yeah, all I did the same thing, just listened. And I think I do that very much so now more than ever, not just with people, trigger warning, with sexual assault cases, but like people in general. Because, trauma doesn't have to come from that. It could be from a lot of things, right? Whether it's verbal abuse, physical abuse, it could just literally be you hang your head. And now I like to think more positively almost of people who seem like they're going through something. And that's what I usually chalk it up to now. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like trauma, but something just going on in their life. I remember, I think like last week, some guy cut me off. I don't know what I did for him to be so pissed off, but he cut me off and he was just honking and screaming. And my first instinct was like, what a dumbass. My second instinct was like, okay, they could probably just have a bad day. And that allowed me to move on instead of like dwelling on this idiot. Because young me would have driven next to him and be like, fuck you, asshole.
Oh my gosh, have you seen Beef?
Beef.
On Netflix?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Right?
I was Steven Yeun like years ago.
You should have rolled up to him and been like, I forgive you.
I should have. But it's crazy because I just think about things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that deep for people to feel that triggered. And it doesn't necessarily have to be something direct either. It could be just
It's a culmination.
a culmination of like just stressors, and road rage, especially in California, is very prevalent. It's crazy how big that is. I don't know if you heard about the case that happened like last year. There was, I think it was last year or a year before, but like some guy was road raging. Well, actually, the lady was road raging first, cuffed this guy. This guy started road raging. Guy pulled out his gun and like shot at her car and it killed like her kid in the back seat.
No.
Yeah, and I just think about things now where I'm like, is it really worth it, for you to like get that mad for what,
It's like Grand Theft Auto? Who's like...
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, but the guy was like aiming at her, he just missed, but like it's just you think about things like that. I've been in situations myself where I was a little bit too angsty to do something about a situation, and it escalated to where I easily could have not been here. Fortunately, I have 9 lives, so I'm still here after all. But
So
yeah,
it's good luck charms.
yes, it is. It is. Thank you.
You gotta
all
get
the
rid of one of
stress.
them because it's one of your lives that you used
Oh
up.
yeah,
You know.
yeah, you're right. You're right. But I just think about now as a adult, even though I was an adult then too. Just not as old. But is it really worth it? And what does it do for you? Most of the time, nothing. And it's just now I think about it, it's just people who don't know how to cope with these feelings. So it's like,
Yes.
okay, yeah, you have an issue, you have a problem. What am I doing to make it better? If I can't do anything to make it better, I should just leave. And that's probably the best solution at the time. And it's weird. I come across a lot of like road ragers.
I think it's part of mindfulness actually, like becoming self-aware, becoming like mindful of who you are really helps change and develop the way you react to the world. Because a lot of times like there's people, stupid people on the street, stupid people in life, but you choosing the way to react is because you've become more in tune, more aware of who you are, rather than you're constantly reacting to the stimulus of the day. That's how I used to feel when I was younger, when I was still like a teenager and everything. I wasn't self-aware enough, and I'd be like upset or angry, and I'd just like lash out because I didn't understand myself. I didn't really have maybe ownership or control over my own mind, and I was just like unaware of what I was supposed to do and just like lash out, because that's what I've learned from like TV, friends, family, whatever. But I think you get to this point in the same way where you have to like own trauma. It's like you have to really like figure out who you are, identify who you are, what you're doing, all of that, and then you can really begin to actually like move forward and like in your life choose the way you want to do things. Like you chose to like, let me think about this, let me be empathetic, like, oh, that guy probably is having a bad day, like, is it really worth it for me to like put myself in a situation where this guy might shoot at me? Because there's people out there who are crazy, and that's how I like to think about it. I don't care if someone's like cutting me off, whatever. I'm like, you go do your thing, man. Like, I'm getting my destination, I'm gonna be there. What they do doesn't bother me, but that's because I've kind of like a part of it is like I've gotten over myself for the most part, where it's like something somebody else does doesn't always affect me. Majority of the time. Sometimes something I'm like, you can't help but react. You're human.
Yeah.
But most of the time I'm be like, okay, just let it in, out. We're good.
Yeah, we have a lot of up and down days too. I think it's just where your mental space is at the time too.
Yes.
Because even though I don't do that anymore, I've had like stints where I'm like, this fucking guy.
Let me get.
Yeah, I think I had one like a month ago. I was like crossing the street. I was on my phone, but I was like walking like normal pace. And this guy honked at me, and I looked at him. It was like an Uber, and I was like, there was no passenger or whatever. And I was already halfway across the street when he honked at me. I'm like, what's the point of you honking at me? It makes no sense. You could already go. Like, why honk now?
Maybe he's like, bro, don't look down on your phone. You're gonna get a phone net. Come on, man.
He looked at
Maybe
me
he's trying to help you.
like this, though. And then I had a slight like lapse in judgment, so I like walked towards the stop sign where he was, and I was hoping he'd still be there and be like, "Hey,
what's up?
what are you doing?"
I'd like a word with you, sir.
Yeah, but then he drove off, and now I handle things like way better. I actually
Since last month.
Yeah, since last month. I mean, I still didn't do anything.
We're growing every day.
Yeah, I think the last time I've done anything like that was like probably like 7 years ago. And that was like a very enraging moment. I think anyone would have done what I would have done, to be honest.
I don't know. You're kind of crazy.
Well, this is why I have a hate for UFC now. Sorry if you're a UFC fan, but no, I'm. Have I told you about this? I was at a UFC football game. We were at a tailgate, and this was when like the vapes were like gigantic and they would blow out clouds of smoke. So it's been a while. But I was at a game. I decided to sit in the back with Quan, Judy, and Elliot because I was like, I don't want to blow smoke in people's faces. So I sat in the back, just not really paying attention to my surroundings because it's tailgate, so obviously I'm drunk. And I'm blowing everything into my shirt because obviously the big cloud is dead giveaway, right? And I just feel something like on my shoulder. Something hit me. And I was like, what the heck was that? Like, I'm drunk, but I'm not that drunk. So then I'm sitting again, just chilling. Another 5 minutes go by, and I feel something else hit me. I'm like, what the hell? Okay, something's going on. I look and I see like a hot dog wrapper. And I look back, I'm like, hey, did one of you guys throw this? And then this lady is like, stop smoking your fucking vape. And I was like, okay, cool. But then, she didn't say she did it. And then these 3 other guys started yelling at me like, yes, quit that shit, you fuckhead. Like, just attacking me at this point, right? And then especially one specific guy that was like on the stairway. he was just like, yeah, you fucker, you like, I have a daughter here. And I was like, damn, okay, whatever. It's not a big deal, but I'm gonna address it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna. I looked at Elliot. He looked at me. He's like, "You're gonna do something, huh?" I was like, "Yeah." So I go up to the guy on the stairwell, and I'm like, I sit next to the stairs where his seat is, and his daughter's right here. And I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I apologize for blowing smoke. I actually had no idea you guys were even behind me." And he's like, "Shut the fuck up. I don't want to listen to you." And I was like, "Hey, but if you have a problem with me smoking next time, just tap me on the back and let me know to stop." And I would do it. He's like, "Fuck you, man. Like, don't fucking tell me what to do." And then at this point, I'm like getting a little bit annoyed because he's not being rational at all. So I look at his daughter and I'm like, "Hey, if you ever want to learn how to deal with a situation like this, do the opposite of what your dad does." And he's like, "Don't fucking talk to my fucking kid, you fucker." And then this other guy behind him is like this bigger dude. He's like, "Yeah, fuck you. You're not a USC fan. You have no USC gear, you fucking fraud." And I was like, "What the hell?" And then this other guy, this like buff dude, was like, "Yeah, sit down." And he called me like the F word. And I was like, "Holy crap, I'm getting teamed up on by these people." So I get up. At this point, I'm livid, right? Like the limiter has come off. So I look at him like, wow, you guys all are get bullying me for fucking what you could easily stop by just asking me. And I was like, you're telling me I don't have UC gear? You don't even look like you play sports, you fat. I just went off on him. The guy used to say now, I was like, oh, you're so fucking buff. I want you to do something. Yeah, sit your fucking ass down. You talk a lot, fucking do something. And then I sat down next to the other guy and I was like, all right, well, now I want an apology. And he's like, I'm not fucking saying sorry. I was like, well, I'm not leaving. He's like, leave me alone. I was like, I'm not leaving. And then eventually I got kicked out because they're like, hey, we heard that you were vaping. They're complaining about you. So I was like, man, I can't believe this shit. So I left like probably like 15 minutes into the game. And I get a phone call from my buddy Quan, who was still there because he was like, I'm not leaving. And he was like, oh, everyone got kicked out that was there. Because,
No way.
Yeah, because everyone else around them told the security guard what happened. And I was like being calm like all the time, and they were like attacking me. But that was the last time where I was like, it just got to be too much. Even though I was in a good mood, but it's like 3 people at a time. I was like, whoa, this is a little bit too much. And they had no business in it. You know what I mean? Like they probably only cared because one person started attacking me, so they got their pitchforks and started to berate me.
How do you always get yourself in these situations?
I don't know. You know what's funny is Ellie's smoking right next to me, right? And they didn't do anything to him.
Cigarette or
No,
vape?
just a vape.
Oh.
Yeah. It was his vape. But yeah, now I'm much better. Now I'm like, what is it going to do? Because, I learned from that, like, none of these guys got anything out of that except just more mad.
It's a big part, like, knowing yourself, but it's a big part being able to have names for the feelings. It's a lot with your feelings. And not just you, but other people. Like if you knew better, you do better. So if they knew, for example, how to deal with feeling angry, that whole situation probably wouldn't have happened.
Don't think you'll get a lot of that at a sports match.
Yeah, I mean,
Also, very
yeah,
true.
right.
There's
Like I do get worried about that because I don't think that society. I don't want to say they failed us, but I want to say they failed us because the doctor talks about how if we spent money, teaching mindfulness, self-awareness, like all these really, nice words and things that we can do for ourselves, these tools, I'm going to call it, then we would have less people in jails. We would have less aggression. So these things that you're experiencing, like they would happen less. And people would be more attuned to themselves and they would understand, oh, okay, well, I'm angry because XYZ is happening. These people are not communicating with me. That's the other thing too, is like using your words. People don't believe in the power of words, but like sometimes all you have to do is talk and listen. And like we could figure out what's happening without getting angry. Because I definitely was like that too in my relationship. That's usually where it comes out the most is like intimate relationships where I start raising my voice.
You're like, you little bitch. You little.
Yeah, I did. There was a period of time where when I first dated Paul, Paul is very good at communication. He's very good at having conversations. So when we get into an argument, I would freeze And I didn't know what to say because I just had all these like nasty thoughts, and I was like, oh, if I just open my mouth right now, they're all just gonna vomit out, and I'm gonna say like,
You're not even a good rapper.
it was just like awful things, and I was like, oh, I can't do this. Like, it's just gonna like, you know.
I'll never buy a house from you.
And I've done it too. Like I've done it where I couldn't control it and it did come out. But yeah, I was either when I was faced with like conflict, I would either freeze up or I would try to get out of the situation. I'm like, okay, I don't want to deal with this. Like, let's just go somewhere else. Or it would just be like, yeah, aggression. And it wasn't very helpful because then it would lead to other things, you know, like, yeah, like aggression is kind of contagious. Especially in your story, like, yeah, people kind of just like, oh, I get a chance to release my anger. Yeah, let's get on this. I don't even know this guy. And they just all, because they're like, oh, yeah, you know, like, I've seen, like, documentaries, like, Travis Scott concert.
Oh, that was bad. Yeah.
That one was just chaos. It was just, like, man being man. And I was like, whoa, this is what happens when we don't use, you know, like, all those tools that I talked about. Like, this is what happens. And people want the opportunity. Like, I think that really talking to you, but the both of you is like, oh, I think not men, women. I think humans will always want a way to express ourselves, have an outlet for our feelings, and being angry is one of those things that we don't always know how to release very well. So one of the things that I learned is like a healthy anger release. So some therapists will be like, hey, grab a pillow, go in your room and punch it. You know, go into your car and like scream really loud because those are things that. Like, you know, we think, oh yeah, I just want to beat somebody up. Like, wouldn't that be so nice? Like, yeah, that'd be so cool. You know, like not cool, sorry, but like it'd be really cathartic for me to beat somebody up. But unfortunately, there's going to be like major consequences.
Yeah.
If you do that.
You know where we should take her? Let's take her to a rage room.
Oh,
Is it when you smash things?
Yeah.
I want to go to one of those.
Okay, let's take her.
Do you get to choose like your weapon of choice?
Yeah, you can get bats, crowbars. Yeah, a bunch of shit. You get to break DVDs, fax machine, bottles, mirrors, bunch of different stuff. Yeah, it's very cathartic.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I love that.
We'll take you.
Done.
That makes sense though, because like I've taken some self-defense classes and stuff, and it is very cathartic.
I thought about doing that too.
It helps a lot. I think everyone should for two reasons. One, it's like it helps you mentally as much as it does physically, and it helps you protect yourself. Like, why not?
That's like the perfect trifecta. Like if it has a bunch of benefits like that, I'm always like, ooh, okay, I'll try it once.
Yeah, because I see, I remember I took a Muay Thai class, and this kid who was there, he looked like he would not take Muay Thai, but he also looked like the one that would get picked on a lot, And, from talking to him a little bit, it sounded like he did get picked on. That's why he's there, but he also fell in love with it, and that's like the way he, outputs all of his stress, which is cool. Because now I see a confidence in him that, like, from taking a couple classes and seeing him around, he's like way more confident, and he's young. To talk to me as an adult, like, as if we're chill buddies, and which we were. It was awesome to see from someone younger.
Yeah.
And you really get that from, developing a confidence in yourself.
As an adult, I really think that extracurriculars for kids is so important.
Agreed.
Just to like fill up their time and for them to explore and try things. Sports I find is good for like aggression too.
Do you think that there is a first step in order to become mindful, like become self-aware? Because at least for me, it was kind of just like learning about, just knowing that it's out, knowing that it's a thing. Like I remember hearing this thing, and it was part of this meditation, and this guy says like, you are not always the author of your thoughts. And you are not your thoughts. Just because you feel sad, you feel angry, does not mean that you are sad or angry. You do not have to embody that. Your mind receives all these different thoughts, emotions. The world that you live in when you close your eyes or open your eyes is the same world we're all living in, And then you could think of anything. You could think of a bus, a candle. You could think of the being angry, sad. That doesn't mean these things are you. It's just your mind is receiving all these kind of different things. You get to this point where you get to choose how to feel. Just because something happens in your life doesn't mean you have to be those things. And for me, it was finding out like, oh, you can kind of choose to be that? Like, I didn't know, and just kind of like learning that that's out there, like really helped me a lot. Where I was like, oh, okay. Like sometimes if I get like sad or anything, why am I feeling, just ask myself, why am I feeling this way? And a part of it is like the you that is feeling this way is not the real you. And that sounds like such a like, oh, okay, cool. For me, it meant so much where I kind of learned to disassociate the me that's feeling this way and the real me. Or I'd kind of like really dive deep into myself and like be like, am I sad? Or is there just a part of me that's feeling sad? A part of me that's like thinking sadness? And just identifying like, oh, no, I'm not sad.
That's really powerful. It's really useful. And it is interesting because most people who like discover it, when I talk to them about it, it feels very simple to them.
It
They're like,
is.
oh, wow, what a like simple tool. Like if I learned this sooner, it would probably be very useful. And I would agree. And in terms of like first step, I think it's like an activity. Like I think that somebody somewhere somehow comes across it and then they realize mindfulness. A lot of it has to do with our breathing. So like meditation, yoga, exercising, and just noticing our breath. That goes a long way. And realizing that, oh, like I'm living, like I'm a living, breathing organism and I do things, my body does things. I'm alive. I'm here. All those thoughts are very grounding, and that really helps with mindfulness and that's kind of it, is just noticing your breathing just from that. Have you ever heard of breath work?
Yeah.
Have you
one
done it
one
before?
of the last one of the last guests we interviewed, we did like a what, a minute or something, 2 minutes. So
Yeah, bottom up.
How is it?
It was good. It
was cool.
It was good.
she told us about how she did a whole thing with one of like the leading people in like that field, and she just crying, had this whole experience of her childhood, kind of letting go of stuff, like letting go of some of that pain, and it was just like she had some trauma, different kinds of trauma, but also in her childhood, and doing that exercise during that like thing that they did just changed her, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I am a really big fan of breath work. I've done it once. I also do want to say that like trauma is trauma, abuse is abuse, like no matter what form that you experience it. And usually if you experience it in one form as a child, you may experience multiple at the same time, or at, at different points. So it is compounded. My experience with breath work was an hour long, and I believe it was told to me that like it's kind of like mushrooms or LSD. Like you kind of do go on like a journey, like a trip. You lay down and you do the breathing, like guided by the guide. And she did warn us, okay, like your fingers might go tingly or you just might get stuck. Like you feel like really in your body. You may see visions and you most likely cry. She's like, just prepare yourself. She's like, probably you're going to cry. And she's like, and all of that is okay. Like all of that is just like part of the experience. It just happens. Like you almost you do like surrender to the experience because you're like, oh, I'm here now. And it's fascinating that it's only from your breathing, like just from the series of breathing. And then once we do it, you start to go into a trance, and then she has music that goes along with it too, and then she just continues to guide you. She's there, she comes and like checks on you, and when she sees you like going through experiences, like if you're crying, she'll just be like, hey, I'm here, it's very calming. And then she brings us out of it, and it's just like, whoa, like what did I just experience in the hour from just breathing and the visuals and like the trip that you go on. Yeah, it definitely, it was a whole journey, and I always recommend it to people. I'm like, you should try it at least once. I really want to do it again, but try it at least once because you just don't know. I know it seems scary to the idea of like, oh, I might unlock something, but you may be able to just also either relive things or live out things like visions that you have not lived out in real life. You're like, oh, well, like, what would it be like for me to tell something to somebody? And you get to like experience that before you actually do it in real life. And it becomes helpful because you actually may never do it, but you were able to just like live it out and see what that's like. And that's helpful too.
That's so crazy. That's so cool. Yeah, I'm down to it.
Hey,
do you also do that?
Rage room, then that. So we've talked a bit about trauma and kind of your journey through all this. I wanted to ask about your other aspects of your life, where you help, people in business, how people here. Is that part of your healing journey? Are you trying to help other people in order to kind of help yourself? because of your trauma? Is that just like a way for you to give back and heal? Or is that something unrelated?
It's all related.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything usually is related.
Do you feel like you grow as a person by helping these people?
Yes. It
Okay.
definitely is like, how do I say this? It keeps me accountable in the field that I chose to continue growing. I have made a commitment to myself that I must continue healing. I cannot stop. I cannot forget about it for like a moment. I cannot lose sight of the healing journey that I'm on. I take breaks from therapy, and then usually a couple months in without therapy, I'm just like, oh, I need to go back because
Yelling
I
at Paul.
need the reminders all the time, basically. I think everybody can benefit from it, but if I'm talking about myself, I need the reminders all the time. I enjoy talking to other people to explore more options. I don't want to limit myself to what I think is going to help me. I just want to try everything. So I consider being like a yoga teacher, getting certified. I want to be certified in mindfulness, like all those things, and everything that I do to myself that I learn is all value like that I can add to the people that I work with. People come to me thinking that their business is the problem. Sure, like, maybe we can make improvements there, but a lot of times because you're an entrepreneur or you're a leader of the company, a lot weighs on your shoulder and you're responsible for a lot of things. And so really what you need is to have your mind in the right place a lot of the time, right? So like if you're dealing with a conflict, like you have to put out a fire, ideally you'd want to be as calm as possible. You want to recognize all the feelings that you feel. If someone's telling you, hey, like somebody pulled out on a deal, and then you're like, okay, well, what do I do now? And those are things that as an entrepreneur you're required to navigate. It can be very fun for people to have these problems, like problem solving opportunities, but a lot of it can be also an impact on your mental health.
Yeah.
Like entrepreneurs, like I understand now why, you see those like ideal entrepreneur lifestyles. It's not necessarily that you have to do exactly what like, I don't know, Steve Jobs did or something, or Mark Zuckerberg, but what you want to do is to create a structure for yourself that you can follow that does all the things that you need to fill your cup before you start servicing anybody else. Because you really like, a lot of times the people that I coach, they're into serving the community. They're like, oh, I want to help marginalized people. I want to help the elderly. I want to help minority. Like it's usually those type of people that I work with. And a lot of times they get extremely burnt out because, there might be like heavy stories or like, things that they have to do with a lot of emotions. Maybe they don't have the tools to build a business. Like it's not something that people can talk about regularly, like how to build a successful business. And not only do they not talk about it, it may not be the route for you. We don't all have to run a business the same way. And you might not have examples of somebody that you look up to. And like, it's hard for me to think, oh, is there like an Asian female that I immediately think, oh, I would like love to have my life look like hers. A couple come to mind, but not the way that like I would be motivated or inspired. But I have found a lot of minority women, like Oprah, honestly. She's awesome. Like, she's just pure inspiration, So when you see people like that, that keeps me motivated. But yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, like, to answer your question, yes, everything that I do ends up being value for the people that work with me. I also really believe that working with me is really based on, like, my character. Like, just get to know me and see if what I'm doing and how I am as a person, because you'll have to talk to me on a regular basis. Is this even what you're looking for? And if I don't add value, it can show like immediately. It's telling that I'm like, this person doesn't value me. They don't see what I bring, and I don't get offended by it. It's just like, hey, it's just the timing. Like wherever you are now, it's not the time for me to be partnered up with you right now.
I feel inspired. I think I'm gonna go home work on my business, guys. You said Oprah is one of. You should check under your chair.
What's under my chair?
You never seen the Oprah's like, and you get a gift. Check under your chair.
Oh, that was a good time. She doesn't do that anymore, does she?
No, that's the only. That's the only thing I've ever seen. I've actually never seen Oprah.
Oh, you haven't?
I've never seen anything.
Wow.
Of Oprah. I don't know what she. I thought it was like she has a talk show, right?
She does. She's definitely like.
What is
a lot
she
more
famous
successful.
for?
So she's famous for her story. So she also went through a lot of traumatic childhood experiences, and she wanted to be a talk show host. Like I can't remember if it happened by accident or if she just got drawn to it or something. And it was kind of an uphill battle because, she's black. So like America's like not used to seeing her on TV. So she started off as a talk show host. I think that a lot of the gift giving is like sponsorship, and it also makes people excited and be on the show and like even watch her. Like, oh, she's giving away free stuff. Awesome. But then what was awesome was like what she would do, she would have guests and she would talk to them and hear their story. So for like years now, that's basically what she does, is that she'll invite very interesting people and just tell their story. So I got really interested in her because she has her podcast on Spotify, Super Soul Sundays, where you can just kind of look and see if there's like someone who inspires you. And then you're like, okay, what's their story? So she loves to interview Maya Angelou because like she considers her mentor. And Maya Angelou, of course, has like a lot of gems. So it's always cool to have Oprah with her like wisdom interview somebody else with their wisdom, and then like see what conversation comes out of it.
We're like kind of like mini Oprahs then. Like we always be interviewing interesting people with interesting stories.
Except I have nothing to give. A little different.
And you're always giving some bottles, so
True.
We got some water, staying hydrated is important.
Very true.
Yeah, it's honestly like I do want to take a moment to appreciate like you, Peter, and Mario for like what you do, because being able to share stories with each other is very empowering.
that's why she's my favorite.
Of course.
Favorite guest.
Oh no!
No one appreciates us.
No, I'm glad you said that, because sometimes we forget what our mission is, and sometimes even with our guests we don't see eye to eye maybe, but that's not really our point. Is to have guests that we agree with. It's more so to see a different perspective from someone else's lens, and hopefully someone else out there gets that same kind of idea where they could resonate. That's really what it's more about, and it allows my lens to be a little bit bigger too, because now I understand things that I've never gone through, but I have a better idea of how it works, and that's what it's really about. Because I can't say I have the same experience as you, but I definitely do appreciate you sharing that, because I think in the very end we all have our own things to deal with, and that's really important to put out there, especially when some of us are viewed in a certain way where it's like, oh, we don't have problems or we don't have demons that we're fighting. But no, we do. We all do. Like the person that I am now is completely different than the person I was like 7 years ago. If you look at me, even as of maybe 2-3 years ago when I went through the episode of depression, like a lot of people were shocked to hear that I would even have anything that would, cause me to go through that. Just because I
remember you telling me
person.
about that. Did you ever talk to Mario about our phone call that we had?
I don't think I did. I don't think I have. Yeah, it was about you and how you made me depressed. No, I haven't told him about it.
I think about that phone call a lot because let's just think about timing. So I did have a podcast called Get Shit Done, I just did it like on a whim. It was a time, and I always try to come back to this place, but it was definitely a time where I was like super creative. I was like, okay, I'm new. I'm an entrepreneur. Like I'm seeing people do cool things. I can try all of them. I can try any of them. So I was like, okay, let's do a podcast. Like let's just talk. And Peter messages me and he was like, hey, I don't know how we started talking, but at some point you're like, oh, you have a podcast. That's really cool. Like I have a podcast too. I was like, oh, cool. Like, all right, we're friends already, like the connection was there. And I was like, okay. So he's like, I have a podcast too. I really like want to pick your brain about it. So like, can you get on a call sometime? And I was like, sure, why not? And so I went on a walk. I don't think you were on a walk too.
I was.
And so we were just talking. And he was like catching up. We were catching up because we haven't talked in a really long time. And you did talk about how you had gone through a bout of depression and people were like really surprised. And so we had conversation about that. And then we had conversation about you starting up this podcast again with Mario.
You did tell me about this.
Oh, I did.
You did.
I'm very forgetful. It's all the meth.
How did you feel about that?
Oh no, I remember because we originally we started in 2018 and then fell off and everything. And I remember you telling me that you talked to Linda. That's why she was going to be our first guest too. Like when you told me about her, you told me about the phone call.
Oh, makes
Yeah.
sense. Makes sense.
And I was actually really excited about it because I had seen our editor's show, Adrian. He had his like own little thing, and I was like, "That's so cool!" And it was so funny. It's the one he did about the New York words, and it was just so good. And it reminded me, I'm like, man, like me and Peter like had a thing. Like we totally could have like gone somewhere with this, and like it made me like sad and like jealous. And I was like, oh man, I wish we could have stuck with it. And then like I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, a month later, Peter hits me up. He's like, "Hey, I've been thinking about doing Guys That Listen again." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm down. Like, let's do it." So it's perfect timing.
I kind of want to ask you, since you said that there's been a lot of change from the last year in review to this year in review, I want to dive a little bit more into your relationship and how that version of you has changed.
Like in my romantic relationship?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say we already, but I have learned that communication can solve just about anything as long as you're willing to talk about it, as long as there's a safe space, not just for one person. It is always a two-way street. So safety is something that I really prioritize, and privacy. So really just ensuring that, yeah, we can kind of talk through anything. This is my favorite memory, where we went to a wedding, and it is Paul's friends and the parents. They were there. I asked them, like, how long have you been married for? And they're like, we have been married for almost 40 years. I was like, wow, 40 years. That's more than I've been alive. So I was like very intrigued. And I was like, hey, I have a question for you. Like, what do you think has made your marriage so successful that you've been married for 40 years? And she kind of thought about it for a moment. The husband joked, which was really cute. You know, he like made a little joke, whatever. But I remember what she said. She's like, it's communication. That's pretty much it. She's like, you just want to talk through everything. And that has been a big thing for me because until I really like thought about communicating and talking, I didn't necessarily think of it as like a skill. And not just a skill, but like a skill that you can get better at. Just talking. Just like listening. Listening is also a really great skill. And sometimes we don't really give it that value that like, oh, hey, like I can hone this skill. Like I can be a better speaker. I can be a better listener. They're like, this is just how it is. And so that has really broadened my views on things. And, you know, like everyone has their own opinion and we can talk about it. We can share about it. And that's just our power, is that we can talk and that we can listen. And like we're alive to do it and to share.
That's awesome. I definitely agree with that. I think communication is key to, I guess, even outside of romantic relationships, right? Even within like the Guys That Listen group, like we have to communicate things that we want to change, things that we want to improve on, things that we have gripes with. I think doing it allows you to get better as long as you're mindful of it, as long as your intention is to do that. Because just like anything that you do with repetition doesn't quite mean that you're going to get better at it. And you think something as communication, something that we do every day, right? By talking, that we could improve because there's so many reps of it. But there was someone who explained it where it's like actively practicing in order to improve. It's very similar, like what's something that we do very often nowadays. We type on keyboards, right? We use the computer every single day. But we don't necessarily improve on our typing anymore because we're not actively looking to improve. Versus when you first start typing when you're a kid, you know, not knowing where all the letters are and typing, you know, words per minute and stuff like that, you're actively trying to improve at typing. You're trying not to look at the keyboard, right? Look at the screen. You're trying to type more words per minute, right? Be more accurate in the words that you type out. I think that's something that a lot of people forget because they just believe in things that are like innate to you, right? Like communication, like, oh yeah, everyone could talk. That's just, you either got it or you don't, you know? And there's something I always bring up. It's very similar, which, you know, I'll bring up Mario as an example. You know, he's very good at communicating with women. And it's not something that is in him, you know, but it's a skill set that he's picked up and he's learned how to navigate those conversations, right? And some people don't. And I see that especially in those interactions where guys are not used to talking to women romantically, you know, they usually end up in the friend zone, right? Because they don't know how to communicate their intentions and what they want clearly. And I think over time, with a lot of practice, like Mario has,
Sir.
you become very, very
He just
skilled at it.
subtly throws you under the bus.
I'm just saying,
For
Mario's
the
good
sake
at
of the
his craft.
conversation.
I appreciate it. You know, I wish I was on the level that Mario is. You know,
You gotta study.
Yeah, I gotta study. I
Yeah.
watch him like a dog. Like,
Have you seen improvements?
no, I really do. I see this guy in action, and I'm like, wow, okay.
I go out like once a month.
I know. That's all it takes. And to think, because I've known Mario since he was younger. I've seen him, you know, grow as this person who's now more confident in his abilities to approach someone, you know? And I think, you know, very easily, guys, at least, you know, from our perspective, they talk about this all the time. Like, do you have game? You know, and what is that? And a long time ago, I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, oh, either you got it or you don't. You know, very similar to communication. And then I got this book, and I was like, I read it. It was just like a pickup artist book. I talked about this a couple times. And while what was in the book, the context didn't really resonate with me because it was just like the approach and the body language and like just things that's not quite me. I understood that a lot of the guys who take this in, they need that help. They need that like instructions on how to communicate because they're so bad at it, you know? And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm not bad at it, but I can still improve. And not just in the form of like trying to court someone, but, you know, not someone just even romantically, you know, let's say an employer, you know, like trying to get a job.
Yeah.
You know, like I am very good at getting jobs because I'm very good at persuading people, but it took a long time because it wasn't something that I knew how to approach when I was younger. And through a lot of experience, that's where it's gotten me. And that's just its own formula. I think in relationships it is quite different because the difference is the vulnerability aspect, right? Like you cannot just play a character.
No. Yeah.
That's not how it works. Because sooner or later it's going to reveal itself, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You know, we can only wear a mask for so long or like keep it hidden, suppressed. Yeah, vulnerability is a big one. And there's still moments where I'm like, this is hard. This is going to be hard to talk about, but it's going to be good. So
Yeah.
we are going to apply all the tools and the mindfulness and the patience and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to say it. And, you know, I have to give myself a pep talk, but 99.9, seriously, I'm like, okay, you know, hype myself up. And like 99.9% of the time, it's better that we talked about it. It's better that I said something and we can like be honest and be like, okay, and give each other the opportunity to have the accountability too for our actions, right? Maybe we don't know. We're living in our own world. Sometimes we do things. Sometimes we're not in the best mood. And yeah, those moments can slip, but we get the chance to be like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, let's just apologize. Or like, how do we do this better? Like, let's just talk through solutions. And the thing too is like, to your point about like, oh, it's not just about picking up girls, you know, but learning about communication. One of the ways that I learned communication or even negotiating was through like, Never Split the Difference. It's where he's like an ex-FBI agent and he talks about like how to negotiate and he's negotiated under like really intense moments, right? Like he's negotiating hostages and stuff. So he wrote the book and you can learn about negotiation. And the biggest thing is, so there's two things that I thought about when you're talking about that, sharing your story is one, words of affirmation is very important. That is something that I've learned in the past like 2 years. As a child, I did not get those things, and it is very powerful. It's very simple. Hey, you look really nice today. Hey,
Thank you.
good job. Thanks for doing that. Like, it's so simple, but it was like a point of tension where, you know, like I wasn't saying thank you for everything, but I'm like, you know what? It actually isn't that big of a deal, and it made a huge impact on everything. And then number two is that communication, like 90% of it is nonverbal. It's not us talking. It's just like how our tone, like how relaxed we look, like where is our body, like are we open, are we closed, like all those minor details, our brain registers that much more than the actual words you're saying.
Yes.
I read this thing, I don't remember where, but it was talking about how using your words to vocalize your emotions is probably one of the most inefficient ways to communicate what's in your mind. You know, you have the way you think, feelings you're feeling, the things you're thinking are so within you and subjective that trying to use these, you know, these tonal sounds that we've learned to make as humans, you know, just these sounds to convey what's really inside of you to this whole other ass human being, and trying to make a bridge, you know, for you to understand what's these real feelings, you know. It's so hard that there's so many other ways, like, you know, like the way you move your body, your tone, all this. You have to use every tool that you have in order to really like convey how you really feel, because words alone do not do enough. Communication goes beyond just the words that you use. It has to be so much more.
Yep, I learned that from my exes. When they said they were okay, they were indeed not
Not
okay.
okay. Yeah.
Not okay.
That's such a default answer. It sucks, but yeah.
Yeah, and I've also learned, you know, a way for me to comfort them and let them know that I actually do care versus like just asking, "Are you okay?" Was to, well, at least for the people that I've been with, is to, you know, kind of give them a little bit of like positive reinforcement through touch, like, "Hey, you know, I just want to make sure you're okay. I do care about you, you know," and I'm not.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm actually trying to close the
Yeah.
distance in what we're trying to
Yeah.
understand versus like separate ourselves. Because I've seen that. I've seen that when, you know, a very tall tell if someone's not okay is when they turn their shoulder to you. I've also noticed that for me too. It's like if I'm not like good and I'm like talking to you, usually I'm not in the direction of the person. So I say whenever you're talking to someone, try to have your body in the same direction in which you're speaking to them. If most of your body's turned this way, but your head's turned this way, it's telling them that you're kind of trying to get away.
Yeah.
But you're still acknowledging that they're there.
I've noticed that when people like are talking to me and they're like talking to me for a long time, I'm like, okay, yeah, and like I'm kind of like turning my body, like kind of like signaling, I'm like, okay, you know, I gotta go, like I'm trying to leave here, you
Yeah.
know, like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
My body's like getting ahead of itself.
That's why I'm very aware of that. So whenever I talk to people, if I'm gonna have a conversation with you at all, it's gonna be me facing forward towards you, and that's why eye contact is very important. It's a lot harder to have eye contact when your body's turned the other way, you know. But a lot of people don't understand that, especially in relationships, because when you have something that's very difficult to talk about, typically it's very hard to keep eye contact. Mario. But there's a lot of little cues like that people don't pick up, and it does come with experience. Though I feel like I'm not even sure what that feeling is called, but when it's like on the bottom of your gut, you just feel like it's really really tough, and it wants to come out when you're having a hard discussion. It's like, oh shit, we're gonna talk about this. A good example would be yesterday. So, you know, with Jude and Jared's situation, shout out to Jude and Jared, he thought he was doing something wrong and that Jared was being mad at him. And he was like, oh, crap, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to make sure that she's not super mad at me? Turns out she was fine about everything once they had the discussion. I guess that would be an example of, you know, sometimes your thoughts, right? Your mind could play the enemy too.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like our brains are wired and we may have certain types of reactions to things because we're used to, like, oh no, like in the past, and it doesn't even have to be with that person. Oh, in the past when I did something wrong, I got yelled at. So you're like, oh my God, I should never do anything wrong because whoever is looking, they're going to yell at me. And that's like so terrifying, you know? And the other thing too is like we have a lot of forms of communication these days. And like well, to be present, I'm also not on my phone as much, but like I don't like texting as like a form of communication. Like it's just, you don't hear the tone, you don't see my face, like maybe I'm making a joke, like I have to put a bunch of emojis just to make sure, like LOL, you know, like I'm just kidding because it's just like I'm not trying to offend you, but I'm like I am still trying to talk to you and I want to stay connected with you, but nothing beats like being in person and like face to face, like one-on-one, like, hey, how are you doing, you know, and like suss everything out because like I'm trying to pay attention to you and stuff, so that's important. And then the other thing is like, you know, communication is also about language, and that might not be everyone's strong suit as well. to like study and learn language. So I really encourage everyone to read more. Please read more. I told my siblings that I was like, everyone needs to read more. No cap, because yeah, like I just think that like there's
I'm on
so
board.
many books that you can read. They can be short, they can be long. Don't feel pressure to finish books. Like just keep exploring and find topics that you want to learn more about and keep learning. And I know there's other forms like YouTube podcasts. Like that's also really great too. So it's really about education. But yeah, like reading and like learning is great because you can improve your language and you can get to learn more words, vocabulary, expand your vocabulary to even also explain.
Can you give us a word of the day?
A word of the day. Oh, you know what? A word of the day that I would love to share is boundaries. So some clients that I've worked with, establishing boundaries and even understanding like what does boundaries even mean, it was new to them. They're like, what? I didn't know I can say when is when. I can say like, hey, no, thank you. That doesn't make me feel good, And that is so important to our agency and to be able to communicate that like, hey, there's like this space around me where I feel safe. And the moment that you start crossing into the space, I do have the right to be like, you don't have to be rude about it. You can be like, hey, excuse me, like you have stepped into my comfort zone. You're kind of making me feel uncomfortable. So right now we need to like do something. I don't know, reset, take a pause, something like that. And to communicate that. And that's in a nutshell what boundaries is like understanding how you feel about things and like kind of, it's not just like, you don't have to say that people have an aura. I feel like, I imagine like that, like there is a little shelter, a barrier, shield around us and we are allowed to maintain that shield. And when somebody is, disrespecting that, then they're disrespecting you as well because it's okay to say no to things. It's okay to be like, hey, how about another time? Or I prefer not to talk about this right now.
Excuse me, sir. Could you please stop vaping in here?
No.
Get this guy out of here.
No, that's true though. I could definitely see that because a long time ago I decided that I was gonna be a yes man, and not in a way where like
really?
I think I was like 25. I used to say this phrase like, "No more fucking around, Peter. You can be a yes man this year." And
I feel like you're always just a night down man. Like, yeah, I'm down.
yeah. I think that's where it stemmed from. Where I realized like, okay, instead of saying yes, I'll just be like, yeah, I'm down, because I saw that movie, the Jim Carrey movie.
Oh yes.
Never seen it.
Yeah. And at that time, I wouldn't say I wasn't like a yes man, but I was definitely saying no more often. And that was because I was in a relationship and I had to prioritize her. But also, I felt like I wasn't prioritizing myself. And there's things I want to do. And I was also a guy where I'm big in discomfort, where I love to be in uncomfortable situations.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see when he travels, he only wears like one pair of clothing, just like
Makes it easy. If anything, that makes it comfortable for me. But
hiking through the woods in just jeans.
Because I think in general too, very similar in how your mind can be the enemy. There's a lot of things that you say no to protect yourself from what seemingly might be danger, but it might not be either. And that's why I seek discomfort, because it allows me to really flesh out. Because there's a lot of things that we, especially when we're younger, we think that we know. We think that we don't like, until you try it. And then you really understand it. And one of the things for me, I'm sure people hear about this a lot, is working in the food industry. A lot of people are like, I will never work in the food industry. I will never be a server. I'll never be a waiter. And I thought very similarly until I tried it. And I was like, oh, actually, I really enjoy this line of work. I actually enjoy the people that I work with. And it's given me a really new perspective on how people treat people in the food industry. But prior, I was a little bit close-minded about it. I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. Even something, and please don't do this, but I'm giving my own experience. When I was younger, I was like very against smoking cigarettes, extremely, right? Where I remember telling my friends who were smoking at the time, I told them like, only bad people smoke cigarettes. Mm-hmm. If you smoke cigarettes, you're not
very harsh judgment there.
Extremely judgmental, extremely harsh.
I still believe that. No, okay.
You got me there. And like it wasn't until I forgot why I smoked my first cigarette. Well, not first, but like a first real cigarette. And I was like, oh, this actually doesn't do anything. Like it. Well, I'm sure some people, they'll have issues with it. But for me, it didn't really do anything. It wasn't like an addiction, nothing. I smoked it. I was like, it actually didn't change me as a person at all. I'm like, oh, that's not what does it. You know, like smoking doesn't make you a bad person. You know, like a lot of these actions don't make you bad people, and you can't box people like that. So I decided to, maybe I don't know that much. Maybe I don't really understand what's going on. So I allow things to kind of present itself. And then therefore, after I see it or go through it, then I can present it myself as judgment.
You don't think smoking has changed you as a person?
I don't think so, no.
So you have a habit. You're always vaping, you know?
Yeah.
Isn't that something that's been incorporated into your lifestyle because of smoking?
No, I vaped actually as a standalone and not because of replacement for a cigarette.
Oh, you didn't smoke cigarettes before?
No, I did. And I stopped. I never smoked regularly, ever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just like until the vape was like a thing, and that was more of a byproduct of drinking and being with friends than it was cigarettes. It wasn't like
and the ease of access of it too.
Yeah, it wasn't like, I need a vape because like, I need something to substitute for the cigarette that I don't have. It was more like, I'm out drinking, everyone's vaping, like that's what I'm gonna do.
It's really funny because I also thought people who smoked were bad. When I was 16, I remember hanging out with Darren, Cherry, and one other person, and then they started smoking cigarettes. We were all at Metro Point, and I'm like, I'm going home, guys. You guys are smokers. And I walked home.
Yeah.
I walked my ass home. I'm like, no, I don't do that. That's weird.
Exactly. There's so many things that you think you know as a child. That
I mean, I
some
still
people,
think it's bad for you.
No. It is
Yeah.
100% bad for you. There's no arguing.
And I don't like it when people smoke around me either. Like, go vape, that's fine. But I don't like the cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
So I'll just step on the side. I'm like, okay, let me go over here. You do your thing. Just don't smoke in my face.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's something that you don't like. You don't like. It's not for everyone. It's not for anyone, really, to be honest. I'm just saying that things don't pan out the way you think they're going to pan out just because this is what you understood as a child. Allow it to kind of elaborate on itself, right? For me, like some of the best people I know still smoke cigarettes. Some people that don't smoke cigarettes, some of the most terrible people I've ever met. So I don't think that necessarily deems you this or that because that's what you perceive people as a child.
It's not like a defining quality in somebody. Some people might not like it for sure, or they don't mind it. And like really the thing with boundaries when it comes to like saying no to things is really like in the moment with other people usually. And yeah, like your personal space type of thing. But really it's like so that you can say when is when. So like you can explore, but like all on your own choice. The choice. I think that's what's important is that you have a choice. You have a choice to say yes or no to things that you like or you don't like. And it's like totally fine. And like it doesn't, you don't have to be rude about it, but their reaction to you saying no has nothing to do with you.
That actually really makes me think because I do have my own boundary for smoking. Actually, like I cannot date a smoker, and I had a girl who like was talking to me a long time ago, but she smoked cigarettes. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't do that. Like I can't date someone who smokes cigarettes, and for me, it's like it's a hard no. That is like an instant like sorry, like it's just not part of my lifestyle, and I don't want it to be, and I dislike it so much that I'm like I'm just not willing to date you.
Yeah, that's your own boundary, and that's you stand by that because that's not something that's you saying no or yes to as far as yourself. That's something that you don't want to allow in your life, and that's totally fine. I think that's the main difference between a lot of people is like not understanding that. You understood that growing up that you didn't like it. You still stand by that. It's something that still doesn't bring you any joy. It might rub you the wrong way because you don't enjoy the smell. So that's totally fine. I don't think that's an issue at all.
It does translate over a little bit into vaping. Like it's different for girls who vape. It's not that I won't date them. I'm like, to me, I'm just like, it's just kind of like unattractive to me. Like when girls like vape, you can do it once or twice, but when they vape excessively, like all the time, I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't like it. And it's,
I see
is
that.
it like kind of like I don't know if it's a display of a lack of care for themselves?
you know what? If I think about it and I break it down all the way down, yes. Maybe in the forefront, it's like just kind of like an ick. I'm like, that's kind of, it's just unattractive. But when it stems all the way down to it, yes, because it's like that. It is like, you're not really taking care of yourself and stuff, or like it's something that's actively harmful for you. And I'm just like, that doesn't like really vibe with my lifestyle. Me saying still drinking alcohol, but like
Oh, those people are the worst.
those people are the worst.
Those people are the worst. Though.
There's just certain things that I'm like, for me, it's like more like that one's a little more active. It's just the way I think about it,
Yeah, I get it. I recently stopped drinking in February. Thank you. I always appreciate
Me
a little, support there. I just did it on a whim in the beginning of the year. I just knew that I was like, I need to try this. And I actually went completely sober. So I stopped smoking weed at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Reality can be stark. I was like, oh, this is what it's like to just like live through life. And completely not under the influence of any other substance. It was very interesting. I do recommend it to people if they, and actually this is kind of cool for me to talk about because I'm a business coach. I think about business. I think about money. I think about finances and a lot like what can finances do for us? And I think Mario, you said earlier that not everyone can afford therapy. Like it can get expensive, right? I do see it as an investment, so not everyone can get there. So along with some of the tools that I talked about earlier, this is also another tool. Is like you don't necessarily always need to get something new to experience something different. So sometimes it's you might need to change, you might want to improve, but sometimes it could be about removing things out of your life and trying to see what it's like. And same thing as you can bring it back if you want to. No, you can say when is when. So going sober was definitely a very interesting experience. I had a couple meltdowns. I was just like, whoa, this is a lot. And I was talking to one of my girlfriends and I was like, I don't really know what's going on right now, but I don't feel great. And she was like, do you think it has anything to do with you being completely sober right now? And I was like, yeah, you're probably right, because this is just a whole new experience for me. I have drank consistently since it was legal, even a little bit before then. And in Canada, it's 19. So at the age of 19, we're already drinking. We're going to bars every weekend. I don't know how I did it. We talk about that sometimes. It's just every weekend, it was just and then I moved downtown, and then it was every day. There was to be a party every day, Mondays, Tuesdays, it doesn't matter what day it is. There's always something happening. And so removing alcohol was really eye-opening to me to realize, how maybe how much it affected my life, how prevalent it was. It's very normal, it's very social. And so to remove myself, it kind of was a challenge because, I felt all these emotions I was suppressing. I wasn't thinking about it. It was a great way to escape. It was always really fun when I was drinking with people. So it gave me time to just think and reflect on what it was like.
It always amazes me that people like you and Peter exist, where you guys are highly functioning, successful, can do all these things throughout the day, the week, but you guys are consistent drinkers. Either every weekend or every week, consistent weekends, weekends, weekdays. And like you said, because I've known Peter for a long time, and from what I'm hearing, it's every weekend for you, right? Every weekend you drink, socially, actively, maybe not always a bender, but consistently. I can't do that. I can. I'll drink one weekend, and I'm the next day, I'm so tired, I'm dead, and I can't do it consistently. It genuinely messes up my own schedule. Where I'll drink one day. Even if it's just let's go drink a bit, blah, blah, whatever. Maybe not get crazy, but buzz. And the next day I'm just just out of whack. Or I'll get a hangover from 2 beers.
Hangovers are the worst. One thing that I realized in observing my habits with alcohol was that as I got older, I became more of a binge drinker. Mm-hmm. It would happen to be a Saturday and everyone's going out and they're all right, let's go together. And it's just we're just hyping each other up. I'm you drink more, I drink more.
No, that's part of the culture.
Shots everywhere. And and we're in this together. And the thing that got me the most, and I'm laughing because Paul calls me, what was it? Oscar the Grouch. Yes. So he calls me Oscar the Grouch when I'm hungover because I'm just a monster. I'm barely human. I don't feel great. I'm borderline depressed. And it just takes a whole week. It started to become a thing where it's a whole week to even recover from it because it was more binge drinking than I'm drinking a little bit every day. It was just, so there was time where I wasn't drinking and I was it's just becoming, it's not healthy for me anymore, unfortunately. People still do it. It's I don't judge people if you drink. I'm hey, if you want to drink, that's cool.
I judge Peter all the time.
That's a lot of judging.
And it's just everyone has their own thing and that's fine because, I started smoking weed again. But I just happened to visit that habit and I was this is something I am now letting go. And that became a bit of a theme in my life where sometimes I'm not trying to get new things, I'm not trying to acquire new. Sometimes I just have to let go of the things that just don't serve me anymore. And letting go when I feel it's right for me, it feels lighter. And so that drinking just happened to be one of those things that just wasn't putting me in a good place, wasn't good for my schedule, and so I've adjusted my life to that.
So first of all, I just want to state I'm not endorsing smoking or drinking. Like if you don't do it, don't do it. But if you can handle yourself, hey, just by all means, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. But I do want to talk about etiquette around people who are trying to quit these things. And what I hear about a lot, because I'm not this person, but I do see it very often as I'm surrounded by a lot of alcoholics. But one thing is, to never really ask a person in a way where it seems like they're doing something wrong by rejecting a drink. So, a typical question that gets asked of a person who's rejecting a drink is like, oh, is something wrong? Or like, why are you not drinking? And I'm sure that's to everything too. Probably similarly, if you hang out with a bunch of like stoners, if you don't smoke, they're probably like, why? But I feel like that is way more prevalent with alcohol than anything. Like, there's something wrong with you if you're not drinking.
Drink
right?
up,
Yeah.
little bitch.
It's like not normal. Like,
Yeah.
something's different.
Yeah, I think that part of the culture really needs to change because I do believe that it is not for everyone. It's not for most people, if anything. But I do have a lot of people in my group who does not drink, who does not participate in most of the things that we do, and that's fine. And I don't want them to feel outcasted by making it seem like they're doing something wrong by saying no. And that's just a piece of like etiquette out there that I feel like it's not really talked about enough.
Is anyone in our group like that? I don't think so, right?
My brother.
No. I mean that says something like, "Oh, you're not drinking."
Sometimes it happens.
Oh, okay.
I think it happens more with the people who drink the most.
Oh, okay.
Like let's say if I'm like with Dewey or something.
I don't count him.
Yeah. Like, but it doesn't like if we're saying we're trying to quit or we're trying to stop for a certain amount of time, everyone's pretty supportive of it.
Yeah.
I think that's the route that it should go because I don't think because I hear this a lot too, which I disagree with. They say like, oh, when you stop drinking, you find out that your drinking buddies are not even like your friends, like who your real friends are. Like, I disagree with that because I think in general, like that's just a bad selection of friends that you hang out with. Because I have people that have been sober around, very similarly when they're sober around me, like we're still friends, and that's just more of like your choice of the people that you surround yourself by, rather than the activities they do. And I think in general also like calling them just drinking buddies kind of really degrades the friendship a lot because there's certain people I only go to Muay Thai with. Are they just my Muay Thai buddies? You know what I mean? There's certain people that I just go to the gym with. Are they just my gym buddies? There people that I just talk business with. Are they just my business buddies? It's fine to have like those categories. There's nothing absolutely wrong with it at all. I think I can't think of a single person I would want to do everything with in general.
Yeah.
There's certain people for certain things, certain friends for certain things. And I think that's okay. It's good to kind of keep certain things separate, right? And, also at the same time, like, I think when people say that, it makes people who do drink feel like shitty, right? Like, oh, that means they just want.
I think you're the outlier here, Peter.
What do you mean?
Yeah, because I think because your life is so you have to socialize in like clubs, bars, all this. A lot of the people that you get to meet who you do drink with like are quality people. And a lot of people that you've grown up with too have been friends first and then became drinking friends, because I understand the concept of drinking friends. I've had drinking friends or, just people that you go and just drink with. And it's like, the thing is, it's like, it's Friday or something, you're out with them and you're all going to have fun, party and everything. And the stigma is, it's like, there's no deeper layer beyond that. There's no actual foundation being built, because it's hard to always get to that when you're just go out drinking, partying, and having fun. So I've had people tell me about drinking friends. I've experienced drinking friends. Even like when I started hanging out with you guys and I would just go and party with you guys, I didn't know the guys like that. It took me a while to like actively seek out to build my relationships. Besides with you, because with you, like we've always kind of clicked and like I can, talk to you differently. But with other friends in our own group, like I've had to actively seek out, even like during like when we've been out at bars, whatever, and like try and form relationships. Because I didn't have that, because I didn't know them. I didn't know anything about them or what they're like as a person, Even with us, like I got to learn so much more about you when we started this, learn about like your family, your past, your traumas, all that. And I think that's kind of like what the word means or like the way it's being used. Because sometimes like people have these friends and they don't try to actively go past that.
Well, that's what I'm saying though, is that there are friendships like that that are a little bit more surface, and that's okay. And that's what I'm stating.
Oh,
is
okay.
that there are people that I go Muay Thai with. I know their name.
So you're Muay Thai
have good
friends.
sessions. Yeah, Muay Thai.
Yeah,
But
right?
it's not like they're not real friends. You get what I'm
Right.
saying? Like
Yeah.
we have these authentic moments, and I think that's really what it's about. Is it authentic or not? Like if you remove that, are you guys still like friends? You know what I mean? Like I'm still their friends. I might not know anything about their family members or anything like that, but we have a good time when we go Muay Thai. We have a good time. We go have a drink. I have eating buddies. People I just literally just eat with. I have coffee buddies that
Yes,
really
yeah.
go get
Friends.
coffee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think that.
I don't have any of that
Well, I'm just saying
How long
that.
did you stop drinking?
Huh?
When did you stop drinking?
today.
He's
You
still
saw me
drinking.
on
Oh, you still
Saturday.
drink? That's true. Yeah, sorry. I thought you stopped drinking in general, but no, you just said 90-10. Sorry. Okay.
Like I'll drink like once a week is what I mean, and then I'll regret it. And the next morning I'll be like, God, why did I drink? I'm
make it to
giving
the
it up.
podcast.
It's my go-to.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in general, that's what I want to talk about as far as etiquette going both ways, right?
I think
To the
I
people
appreciate
quitting
that.
and the
Yeah.
people who are
That's fair.
still in it. Mhm.
Yeah, I think I definitely appreciate that because when I decided to do that, I did brace myself for what would happen when I tell people. I was like, okay, maybe there's a small percentage that might not hang out with as much. Right? It's not that I don't never see them, but like maybe drinking and socializing that way is like that's how they socialize. So there's like a chance of that. Maybe I'll get some comments. Maybe I'll get some questions. And then maybe there's some people who are like cool with it and they don't. They're like, hey, cool, congrats or good job or something like that. And yeah, I was just kind of bracing myself for a change in my life and a change from the circle that I'm in. And it did happen. It was very subtle. It wasn't like, I'm never talking to you again. Oh my God, you don't drink. Or I might get invited out less. But to me, it's not like, oh, it's because I'm being excluded. It's because they know me. I said at set a boundary that, hey, I'm not drinking anymore. And if you respect me, then, you'll understand that if maybe you invite me to these things, I might not enjoy as much. And there are moments where they do extend the invite and I'm like, okay, well, I get to decide if I want to come out or not because I might have an idea of what it's like. Like when we went out on Saturday, that was a little bit overwhelming actually because I work from home a lot, so I don't socialize a lot. And so I'm like in my comfort zone. And so not drinking, I don't go to as many social things that are like really big groups where like a lot of them are drinking. And also now I'm in like a foreign place. So that was like very interesting because it was just, there are still moments like that where I'm like, oh, right. Like I'm kind of just like, this is a new experience for me being sober. What is it now going to be like now talking to people? Because I really want to encourage people to bring back more non-drinking socializing events.
Bring back sobriety.
That might make
new
a great
slogan.
T-shirt because,
great t-shirt.
board games are like fun. Eating. I think eating is a great way to connect with people
That's my
because you're like,
favorite.
hey, we all need to eat. So if you have time and you want to come eat with me, let's do it because then we get to hang out and eat. Like just a need that we have. And yeah, just exploring new things, new activities, hiking, camping. I don't know, that kind of stuff is just, it is like out of my comfort zone, but those things I'm like, oh, you know what? I've never tried it. So maybe it'd be fun for me. And then that's where I'm trying to find fun. Because I think that's the other thing about it too, is that like everyone likes to have fun. We are human beings. We want to just hang out and chill and have a good time with our friends. So really the challenge is finding ways to connect with these people that you connect, and maybe originally it was through drinking. You just connect another way. I have a group of girlfriends like that. Like with the four of us just would go to parties together. Like, okay, hey, where are we going tonight? Like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, like where are we going? Let's get cute and we're gonna go out and we're gonna get guys to buy us drinks and pop bottles and whatever. That was a big part of what we were doing in our 20s. And then over time, it's not to say that we don't do those things anymore. It's just like, okay, what else can we do together? Because we clearly enjoy like our company, we're hanging. We've also have these shared experiences now. So how do we continue to build on top of that? And exploring wellness things is actually like something as well, like going to spas with people. I've
pretty
had friends who invite me over to their condo if they have amenities to like do a sauna, hot tub. It's cool too because it's also like sometimes really budget friendly, and you're like, it's nice because like this is like something new to experience. You don't have to always drink to socialize. You also don't need to spend money to socialize. Like
That's true.
That's another thing too.
I have some friends where I can like, we'll go play board games and stuff. Usually it'll be like at a brewery, so there'll still be some alcohol, but it's not the same as like, you're going out to like a bar or club where it's a whole other vibe.
That's also very true too.
Can you imagine our friends just going to play board games?
Yeah, some of them love playing board games. I'm the one who hates playing board games.
Maybe hate board
You guys
games.
go to
It's
Dave
so
and
fun.
Buster's to drink, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what about the games?
I mean, some of them play games. I just
Yeah,
don't
some
play
of
the
them do,
games.
yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
That's another thing too, right? We could talk about that dynamic a little bit. Like, for instance, when we talk about breweries, like a non-drinker and a drinker go to the brewery and still enjoy themselves, right? Because there's food. You know, like if you don't want to drink, that's fine. I can still have my drink, and it's not like it affects anything. You still have a conversation. I think that's another thing, right? The social aspect, where we're not in a bar where it's like blaring loud music and you can't get past the surface because of it. So I think there is in between like medians, and sometimes you know there are still blurred lines too, right? So for instance, I'll give you an example. I went out with my friends Adam and Joel, and we all drink, but we went to Yosemite. But we're thinking like, oh, you know, we're doing something like we're exercising. We're going on a hike, so it's good. But then the first thing we do is hit up a liquor store, right? And then we find out that, oh crap, like it's open container there. So we're drinking as we're hiking. So we're like, okay, at least we like X'd out the drinking by hiking so much,
That's not
you
how
know?
it works.
But also it was still fun. It was, you know, it's better than just sitting down and having a drink. And, you know, for us none of us are in a rush to stop, but we're also not trying to separate ourselves from everyone else because we're just going to drink.
Could you do it without drinking?
Hiking?
Yeah.
Yeah. of
No,
course.
could you guys go hang out? The three of you guys just go without drinking. Go
Yeah.
hike.
Yeah, of course. If we do it, how much we want to do it? Probably not that much, but we can. We can. Like we've definitely gone to restaurants where there's no alcohol and we just go to eat. Like that's our main thing. Is like we love to eat, and if we can indulge in a drink, we will. But it's not necessary. You know,
Yeah.
like oh that restaurant doesn't have a bar or doesn't have like beer, we're not gonna go. No, we're not like that at all.
It really reminds me. So I've gone hiking with Henry, and we were hiking in Guatemala. This like big old volcano and stuff. Halfway through, there's like there's little people sell you like stuff. He just gets a beer. Or no, he brought beers and he's just like opens up a beer and it's the loudest beer you've ever heard open. We're in a fucking hiking up to a volcano area. It's us and it's like other tourists and families and stuff. Nobody's drinking, and it's just. And everyone just looks at him. He's like, "Oh no, it's not that kind of hike." And that's been my experience with like kind of like the group and stuff, where it's like, okay, go. It's a hike. For me, like drinking on a hike is weird. Like I don't know. It's so out of the vibe that I'm trying to experience that moment where I'm like, okay, I'm surrounded by nature, exercise, like all this wellness, whatever. Let's go do that. We went to some other hike too, and then he ended up buying from the liquor store, and I'm like, okay, we'll drink and stuff. We got trashed. We couldn't even make the hike the next morning. Like
Yeah, I don't know about that part.
So I do get what you're saying, but I know there's different groups from like some people that I'll go hike with. I'm like, why would we drink? Like we're gonna go hike. It's just very very different. It gives me an idea of very different groups.
Yeah, and you definitely need to reflect to see what kind of person you are when you are under the influence. I think that matters a lot too. Like Mario was saying earlier.
I'm just happy when I drink.
Like I could drink. And then the next day, I could wake up at like 6 a.m. and go to the gym and then go to work and, do the podcast, whatever. So it doesn't really change too much for me,
You're
But
crazy.
if it's
You're so
literally
crazy.
setting yourself back, like if you can't make the podcast the next day, you might not, probably shouldn't drink, Mario?
Who said, hey, I don't think Sunday's a good idea. That was me. I got stuff to do.
It's true. It's true.
I was wondering if
did.
we were going to talk about this.
Specifically
He did.
said, hey, I don't think Sunday is a good idea.
I didn't know you were gonna come out to drink. I didn't. I thought you were gonna be chilling, and then when I saw you a little buzz, I was like, "Oh, he is drinking."
No,
tonight.
I started at 11 a.m.
I did not know you started at 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I had stuff to do. What do you mean? I had stuff planned.
Wait, what?
I went to the fair. Then I hang out with my high school buddy. We were drinking. We were
You mean
getting
you were
beers.
drinking since 11 a.m.?
I was out since 11 a.m.
Oh.
I started drinking at 1. Still a long time.
Much
Yeah.
better.
Still drink a lot. So
Okay, so I didn't know. I didn't know you were drinking
Yeah.
at all because
Yes.
there are times where Mario's like, "Oh, what are you gonna do tonight?" And then I know he's gonna come out and he's gonna have a couple drinks or not.
Yeah.
But that night I had no idea if he was even gonna come. So I was like, "Okay, this is gonna be a chill night for Mario. That means we could get up early tomorrow and do the podcast. It's not gonna be an issue."
I was very, very tired.
But then one
most I
drink
drank,
became 10, and then
Yeah.
12 p.m. came, and yeah.
Yeah. That's the other thing too that I've noticed is like I'm really not trying to judge people who drink because it's just like again like everyone has their own vice, their own thing. Like whatever works for you, it's totally fine. In my experience of drinking, what I noticed and sort of what people have been starting to tell me, so that's been interesting too, is that people will talk to me more about their drinking and they'll be a little bit more self-aware and they'll talk to me about it. And they're like, yeah, just for whatever reason, like it's never just one. Like I can't just have like one drink. It just ends up being like 10 by the end of the night. And then I don't notice. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because like I like to just hear it. I just want to hear what's your experience and like, for you to continue like just reflecting like, oh yeah, like why does it become 10?
I actually learned about that. Yeah, so it's actually alcoholic behavior.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it really is. Where it's like if you don't have the ability to stop at like 2 drinks, that's an arbitrary number. Some people can't. Like I've talked to one of my friends. She's like, yeah, if I take one, like I have to keep drinking. Like one's not going to get me to that feel. One's not going to get me to that moment. I can. He's like, I can go out, socialize, whatever, and drink. But when I'm drinking, like I have to keep drinking more. I can stop. I can stop at 1 or 2, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. Maybe I'll get a buzz, maybe not. But there's some people who just can't stop. And I don't remember the exact term, but it's some aspect of alcoholism.
That makes sense. And even like the definition of alcoholism is kind of strange too. It's really muddled because to some people, like having 2 or 3 drinks a week is like alcoholism. Some people, it's like blacking out is alcoholism. Some people, it's like having a hangover where it's actually affecting your life is alcoholism. I think in any terms where if it's detrimental to you, as far as like clearly detrimental to you, then I think it's issue. It doesn't necessarily have to be defined by the book of science as alcoholism, but if it's an
Says
issue,
an alcoholic.
I wouldn't ask
We
Peter
don't
if he
have to
has-
use
do you
the
have
book definition.
yeah, just look at me. Just look me up. You'll find it. But yeah, I do see people on the opposite side too. Like Mike Aguilar, like he'll have like a beer or 2 and he's like chilling. He almost never ever.
Yeah, he
exceeds
never,
it.
huh? I've
Almost
never seen him
ever,
drunk.
He just likes to enjoy his 1 or 2 beers and that's it.
And just vibe.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah, and I think it's just again depends on who you are. Every person is different. There's not
Yeah.
a set rule on how you should function. Like
No.
some people I know, like I remember this pro skater that I saw his story. He said like he drinks like a beer and he blacks out. I'm like
wow.
he should not drink.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
some people
Yeah.
I know for sure that should not even have a sip. And
Yeah.
it just again it goes back to depending on who you are.
Yeah. A lot of us are allergic.
Yes.
Like I'm allergic. Like I would turn red. And when I reflect back on like what it felt like to be drunk, my heart would race. It's almost like I'm having like honestly anxiety. But I know I'm not, but that's how like it feels like in my body. So it's like my heart beating really fast. Parts of my body will get red, especially my face and then even in my chest. And things start throbbing. And it's just like very intense. And then all I'm thinking about, well, I should probably drink more so I don't feel this feeling. Right? So it's like, okay, I have the feeling and then I'm like, okay, I want to drink because of the feeling. And then now I'm so uncomfortable. I'm like, oh, I should drink more. And the feeling will go away. And we used to have a joke too, like we wear like crazy high heels like to a club, and then we're like, oh, I know it's going to hurt later, but like we're just going to get really drunk and we won't notice. Oh, damn.
Being a girl ain't easy.
No, it's not. It's not. Yeah, we just have like high like these society standards, but yeah, like I think a lot of it, like that, what comes up for me when we talk about it is that the realization that I feel like people don't always tell us when we're younger is that as you get older, you start having to parent yourself. That's like a role that you play because your parents will play a certain role, and parents can do what they can, depending on like how they are. And so many of us would have to reparent ourselves. Like we have to start watching, okay, like what are we eating? Like, are we eating 3 meals a day? What time are we waking up? What time are we going to sleep? Like how much are we drinking? Like, because as adult, like we actually have this world that we can do anything now. Guys, this is it. We made it. We can do anything we want. But the thing is like, should we?
Very true.
So you mean being responsible?
Yeah. Yeah, right? And like I think I was watching like Post Malone. He was talking about how he I can't remember if he went sober or if he's he's not sober, but what he said on a podcast was that he now drinks responsibly. So he's like, it's not like I stopped drinking, but like I'm gonna have like a 1-2 and that's it. And people, if they ask me whatever, it's like, yeah, I'm just drinking responsibly. Like this is it. Like I got shit to do tomorrow. Like,
Yeah. I think that is more in our culture though, to like constantly push ourselves to the limit. Like you're gonna have friends who are like, oh yeah, let's take another shot, and not knowing how to say no to pressure is like a different thing than not knowing how to say no to yourself. Because I rarely really push myself to drink that much.
well, you were pretty good on Saturday actually, because we were
was
like
I?
trying to get you to drink, and you're just like, well, not trying to get you a drink. Sorry, we like want to get you a drink, but you're like, oh no, I'm good. I'm working. I have to take photos.
Oh,
Wait,
yeah.
you weren't drinking?
No, I was drinking, but I was
He
just
was.
wasn't
He was kinda
overly
like-
drinking.
I was like, he like started
you
slowing
look
down a
pretty.
little.
No.
You look sloshed.
I knew I
I
had
mean,
jobs to
you
do.
kind of like slowed it down a little, you know, so that
Peter's never the kind of guy who you had to force to drink. He'll just, oh, okay, yeah, I'll drink. You know? Oh, yeah. He'll never force you to drink, but he also rarely says no. He's like, oh, okay. Or if he's working, like, oh, okay, sure. But it's like, you know, you're very steady throughout the night. Unless it's like you're in LA or something. Like,
Yeah, when I'm going out, I'm going out.
you need to put like a message out for everybody. Peter's here. Peter's going out.
it's so funny because there's been times on the podcast when I've gotten really drunk because like he doesn't really. Well, I expect someone to tell me no or like, oh, this is too much, and I'm just, oh, yeah, heavy hand, blah blah, you know, and then I'm like, oh shit, he's starting to slur his words. I'm like, oh, my bad. that's on me. My bad.
Even worse, his pores on my cup are way bigger than his own.
Oh yeah, they're significantly bigger.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about trauma. We talked about your healing journey, learning to communicate, going sober. And is there anything else that you want to tell us about before we close out? Anything that's changed with you? Anything important to you?
The entire time I've been reflecting on this experience, like coming back on the podcast, being able to talk to like you, Peter, and you, Mario, as like two men that listen, has been very important to me. And I appreciate that you both made me feel very safe and participated in the container exercise.
Yeah.
That's very important to me as a survivor. And I prepared a lot to come here on the podcast to talk about those things that you listed off. Before I came here, I talked to my therapist. I was like, hey, this is what I'm doing. So she prepped me as well. We did exercises.
Oh, wow.
I started reading that book a little bit before, and because it was happening today, I was like, okay, like now I'm determined to finish it so that I can at least talk about some of it and share some of the things I learned from the book. So I like prepped it, and part of me, I'm glad that I did. It definitely made me feel more confident and comfortable sitting here. But the other half is really just the space that the both of you are able to hold. Especially as men, I definitely have, and we didn't talk about it, but like we can say for another episode, just like my feelings toward men. And
Shout out to Paul.
like lack of trust. Yeah, right. Shout out to Paul. Yeah. That's something that, him and I work on together. And it's really important when it comes to intimate relationships, befriending others of opposite sex, because it's just something that, it is different. It is different. Even society makes it very different. But yeah, that has been very helpful for me to continue to share my story with more men, have men in my corner, and just help each other understand the world together.
I love that.
Big claps.
That's great. Yeah,
Oh, no.
I'm glad that you did all that prep work in order for you to share everything, because I think what you shared was very valuable. Not just to us, but I'm sure a lot of the people out there, other survivors too, and maybe people who are on the fence about seeking help, starting their healing journey. And hopefully that motivates them to do so, because, I mean, I would have never been able to tell a lot of things that you were going through without you sharing. And I think that's great, because where you are right now is great. So,
And, in the same vein, thank you for trusting us with that. We, me and Peter, we do try and create, a safe space where, we're here to listen and learn. Like, we may not always know and we may not always be able to relate, but we try and, like, be empathetic, be understanding, and, like, try and put ourselves in your position, in what you've experienced, and kind of, like, feel that and act accordingly. And give you the room and space to, like, feel that vulnerability and, like, express it. Because sometimes what you need to do, you just need to talk about it. You put it out in the world, and you change how it affects you. Hey guys, welcome to Lightning Round, where we ask our guests some rapid fire questions. If they can't answer in time, they have to drink. But she's sober now, so she can't drink.
sparkling water.
Yes.
Linda, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1. What is your favorite quality of Paul?
His ability to love me unconditionally.
What is your least favorite quality of Paul?
Spicy.
Sometimes he gets really excited, so the volume of his voice goes really high.
I do the same thing. I do the same thing.
He's really good at projecting his voice.
It sounds like a positive trait to me.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Depends on what you're doing at the time.
He's getting excited about like sleeping masks. And you're like, oh, try to get rest. He's
Babe, I just sold this house. Who's someone you would want to coach?
Ooh. I never thought about that because I just leave the door open to whoever seeks me out.
No one,
Yeah.
no someone. If you had the opportunity to coach somebody famous,
Someone famous.
yeah, someone famous.
Is it funny that the person I think about is Drake?
No, that's perfect.
That'd be pretty cool. That'd be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. He seems like he might have some relationship problems. Intimacy problems.
If
see
you, if you and Paul started a band, what would the name of the band be?
I'm thinking of like the realist or like the real ones.
Okay.
Something like that.
If you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
That's always such a hard one. The first person is usually Karl Lagerfeld. Virgil is probably up there now, unfortunately, because he's dead.
He is up there for sure.
Yeah, that's always really sad when I think about it. Alexander McQueen, mostly designers, because I think this is something that gets me too. Is that like, so I realize that people who are really creative usually pull it from like a dark part of themselves, a darker part, and so sometimes they lean a lot into the darkness, and that takes them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like there's a lot of like Alexander McQueen, like he just created such beautiful like tragic art pieces, and sometimes that takes them over. Yeah.
Would you rather have made an OnlyFans for yourself or for Paul?
For myself. The other day, should I share a story? The other day, I was like, we went for pedicures. I took him to get a pedicure, and so my toes are like nice. Really nice.
I'm feeling nasty.
She did a good job. They are very nice right now. And I looked down at my feet. We're like by the pool, and I was like, I have great feet. My feet. These are people would pay for these feet. He's like, oh, should we start like an OnlyFans? And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. He was like, well, we can like AI generate it. You know, your photo is going to be the OG one, but then you generate photos similar to it. And I was like, the first time I thought about considering having an OnlyFans.
I'm gonna look that up.
I'm gonna look that up.
All right. My last question is: what's one goal that you have for the year that you want to accomplish?
I really want to enroll in a course. We might have talked about it in the first episode that we did together, that like I have these feelings about school, like the education system. And that's something that I'm trying to challenge, is like, okay, because I feel like as a role model, I shouldn't be telling people to like completely eliminate the concept of education and paying for education. And so I want to challenge that notion and take more courses.
All right. What was the biggest challenge you had this past year?
Sharing my secret and like owning the secret is something that happened to me.
What would you say is the first step in order to seek help?
Just do it. Just do it. Yeah, don't let the fear take over. Just like if you have a thought like, hey, someone can help me, do it. I can understand that some people might have financial or like budgetary reasons why they cannot, but if you can, or like if the timing is right or whatever it may be, and you need something and the people immediately around you can't do it, pay for it. Just pay for it. Pay for a professional. Like it helps because they're so knowledgeable and they like usually very dedicated to the craft, and they're really like kind of like obsessed with like learning more about it. So a lot of therapists like stay up to date. Like they keep challenging themselves also, for example. So yeah, don't be afraid to pay for it. Don't be afraid to just do it. Just go out there. Like then the people you pay, they don't judge you. Like you literally pay them to do this.
What would you say helped you the most outside of therapy?
Community. Yeah, community, feeling supported. You know, maybe even in hindsight, now that we're talking about it, like maybe being sober was like kind of our first step, because being sober was like a big like, oh, I'm gonna have to tell people about this, and it's gonna be happening regularly because everybody drinks, right? So I literally was like, oh, I'm good, thank you, I'm not drinking. I'm constantly telling people that, and so yeah, just being able to just kind of tell people.
And for my last question, What is one thing that you want to work on your healing journey still till today?
Finding out the window of tolerance. So that's something new that I discovered where everybody has a window of tolerance. So you can be hyper aroused or you could be hypo aroused. So meaning that like if it's a spectrum, I'm going this way. So everybody has this window where this is where we are truly ourselves. We are calm. We can like learn things. We can talk about things and be like in a good, comfortable space. So everybody has this window. And so continuously finding out where that window is, where those boundaries lie. Like we're kind of always testing it, right? Even just within ourselves, not necessarily with other people. It will help us figure out like when we're nearing, oh, like, I'm getting like hyper aroused right now. Like that's not really where I want to be. So usually like anger, sadness, a lot of anger, aggression is there. So yeah, just kind of working on where that window is for myself. I'm still learning. Like things still, of course, like I'm still angry about things. I'm still sad about things. Like things will come up where it's going to be very uncomfortable for me. So just finding out how to get back to that neutral, people can call it aligning with yourself. That is something that I am still consistently working on, and I probably will have to for the rest of my life because new things come up, and I'm like, oh, this is a scenario I have not encountered before. Like, what should I do here? So yeah, that's something that I want to continue working on.
All right, guys, that concludes our lightning round. I want to say thank you to our amazing first guest ever coming back to us. Linda, let us know where we can find you.
Oh, I'm so honored when you say that. You can find me at lindayoung.com. On Instagram, it's Musings of Linda. I'm on there here and there. It's, social media has its own thing. And something that I'm starting to work on that I would really like to share with everybody is that I'm trying to work on retreats. Like you asked me, Peter, like something that was really important in my healing journey is community. It is finding people who they don't have to share the same experience with me, but it's really just like cultivating that space so that we can talk about those things, hard topics. We can connect, and it's not over, substances all the time. And for us to do healing activities and to potentially introduce you to mindfulness. A lot of times it's those activities. So that's something that I'm very passionate about right now.
And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate you sharing everything because I did not know that you have to prep so much to go through all those sessions of therapy to open up like this for this podcast. I can't think of a different way I would want to have this 1 year anniversary for a podcast than you coming on and sharing all those things. So I do appreciate a lot from both me, Mario, and my cousin Vin too. Mm-hmm. And
thanks, Vin.
I'm learning myself too to how to open up. I'm now opening up to the idea of prepping for these kind of conversations because I'm not a planner, I guess. But thank you again. And I want to thank everyone else who's been watching the podcast all the way through. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and comment below what you guys want us to talk about next time. And remember, live fast, eat ass.